Chapter 4360. What identity are you using to speak to us? Maternal grandmother? Dragon Clan's clan head? Or your daughter who died outside? Long Chuyun's mother? Impudent. A beautiful middle-aged woman beside the old madam couldn't help but shout angrily. Long Qian raised her hand and stopped that beautiful woman from continuing to hoot. She took a deep breath and looked at Arbor. I know you siblings have a grudge against me. Grudge. Arbor couldn't help but snicker. He tilted his head and looked at everyone in disdain. How can someone without feelings have a grudge? Everyone looked over in a daze. They saw the little stoic whose white robes were not tainted by a speck of dust. Her expression was indifferent as she stood there with her hands behind her back. She was like the vast sky, aloof and lonely. Us siblings didn't come here to acknowledge you as our family, nor do we have any intention of seeking connections. We just want you to hand over all of Mother's belongings. Also, please hand over her remaining life lantern's broken shadow, because you don't deserve it. You. The beautiful middle-aged woman glared and couldn't help but turn to look at the Dragon Clan's clan head, Long Qian. Aunt, are you going to allow her to be so impudent? Are you going to allow her to trample on our Dragon Clan's face? Aunt, you heard about what happened just now as well. This woman who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth dared to severely injure my son. Aunt, he's a grandson too. Are you going to allow her to shut up? Long Qian looked sternly at that beautiful woman. Aunt. Bai Ning Shuang stomped her feet in anger. She had already heard about her son Long Ji's incident, but she hadn't rushed over to see how badly he was injured. However, she felt like her heart was about to shatter when she heard the vivid description of the incident from a messenger. Must you speak like this? Old Madame Long Qian took a deep breath and leaned on the cane in her hand. Just now how can you not know what I did just now? That bastard called Long Ji insulted my mother at the city gates. This isn't something that happened overnight, right? Traitor? Is this the crime that you Dragon Clan scum are trying to frame her with? She is such a proud and aloof person. Why should she accept your accusations? When she single-handedly fought with the Shuntian Manor, what were you cowardly clansmen who only knew how to hide at the bottom of the sea doing? Moaning about nothing, living like a drunken stupor. I only asked today, how much is Xiao Xiao phone you? Look at her with a smile. She's such a foolish woman. She sacrificed her entire life for your despicable race. In the end, she even lost her life. It's funny, isn't it? I think it's funny too. Ha! What a sad life. Stop talking. Long Qian shouted angrily. She is destined to be alone for the rest of her life. Arbor suddenly raised his voice, and his cold voice covered Long Qian's shout. Do you know what it means to be alone? Family, parents, brother, husband, son, daughter, everything is gone. In the end, he died miserably in that secret realm. Don't you have a heart? Don't you feel pain? She didn't know why her eyes were brimming with tears at the end. Long Qian gripped the cane and stood there with a stern expression. Yet Long Chuyu wailed bitterly and dashed forward to hug the little stoic. Suddenly, he was pushed away forcefully and met with a pair of bone-chilling phoenix eyes. Emo Yin reached out to pull the little girl into his arms. He suppressed his emotions, and his voice was low and trembling. Let's go back. Chapter 4361. It had only been a short while, but she had angered Jojo to this extent multiple times in a row. Go away. You don't have the right to touch her. Mo Yin looked disgusted and pushed Long Chuyu to the ground. He grabbed her waist and looked down at her with wavering eyes. I'll take you back. We won't care about what happens here anymore. I only want you to be happy. What Merfolk tribe? What killing Tianyan? These people and matters had nothing to do with his Jojo. Mo Yin caressed her head and looked down at her reddened eyes, unable to hide the heartache in his eyes. Jojo, don't cry. My heart is in unbearable pain when you cry. I don't know where to go, although he didn't say anything. The warmth from his palms calmed Arbor down a little. Long Chuyu collapsed on the ground and started bawling. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's its uncle's fault. It's me. I'll let your mother down. It's all because I'm useless. Madame Long rushed forward to support Long Chuyu. who was on the verge of a breakdown. She turned around and looked at Arbor with a complicated expression. Long Qian gripped the staff in his hand tightly and said indifferently, "Don't cry. I've taught you for so many years. Why do you still only know how to cry when something happens?" Long Qiu felt terrible. He supported his wife's hand and staggered to steady himself. "Mother, what happened back then? You can't blame anyone for what happened back then." Long Qian turned to look at Arbor, a cold glint shooting out his eyes. "You're young and don't know the whole story. It's pardonable. But things aren't what you think. Send Mother's life lantern's broken shadow and all of her belongings to Cloud Court within 2 hours." Emolian coldly interrupted Long Qian's words and directly picked up the little stoic before turning to leave. "Clan headlong, you could try the consequences of disobeying this monarch. I'm afraid you can't afford to gamble." After throwing down these icy words, Emolian was disinclined to continue conversing with other people, so he left with Xiao Mu in his arms without looking back. Mu Xingqian only felt his heart clench uncomfortably. He glanced at his indifferent grandmother, then mechanically turned his head and strode after her. Although the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was smiling, his eyes were cold. Leisurely putting down his arms, he glanced at the silent Dragon Clan leader and chuckled. "Hurry up. Our patience is very limited." When the rest of the people saw this, they hurriedly followed and left in a group. "Shue, look, is that Mother?" Qing Hongsa suddenly cried out in surprise. She raised her hand and tugged at Qing Xue's sleeve. Qing Xue naturally saw the queen and her entourage. She hurriedly went up to greet them, unable to hide her excitement. "Mother!" Qing Hongsa stood behind Qing Xue and did not step forward. She only looked at the queen with a complicated expression. Ilwan stepped forward and bowed in greeting. "Greetings to Her Majesty. This subject is very happy that Her Majesty is safe and sound." Beautiful queen looked travel-worn, but her eyes were exceptionally black and bright. Qing Xue looked at her mother with tears in her eyes. She curled her fingers and restrained herself. Only then did she not impulsively jump into her mother's arms. Qing Yi also looked at Qing Xue with a gratified expression. Shue, Mother is proud of you." Qing Yi reached out with a smile and hugged her daughter, who flew into her arms. She stroked her hair with a gentle gaze. Chapter 4362. When I came in just now, I heard that Jojo had some conflict with the mermen. Where are they now? Mother, it's a long story. Let's talk as we walk. Qing Hongsa stood outside the crowd. She opened her mouth slightly and watched Qing Xue and her mother leave together. She froze on the spot. Hilwan and the others followed the queen, leaving her standing there in a daze for a long time. Then she slowly followed them, dejected. So her mother really didn't like her. Didn't she already know this? Why did she still feel sad? "Mother, are we really going to stay in Wangchuan?" Qing Xue held the queen's left hand and tilted her head to look at her. If she lived under someone else's roof for a long time, it wouldn't feel good. Qing Yi looked at her with a smile. "Aren't we going to set up the Tianyin battle group?" "Mother, you want to join? Lisha Island should be a good choice." Qing Yi patted the back of her daughter's hand. "We'll take it one step at a time. Let's see first." Arbor pushed open a long window and looked up at the silver moonlight pouring down from the sky. Faint silver frost covered the window. The faint moonlight illuminated the courtyard. A gust of hot wind blew over, ruffling a strand of hair by her temples. Mo Lien walked slowly to her side and looked down at a small mahogany box on the table. Not long ago, the merman had sent her mother's belongings. There weren't many of them. After all these years, her mother only had this small box with her. A few pieces of jewelry and a few personal items. There was also a short knife inlaid with a row of blue gems. It looked very earthy. It was very ugly, and the handle of the scabbard had been worn out. It was clear that the owner liked this knife very much. Arbor took it out. The blade hadn't been used for so many years and was no longer shiny. There was even a small cut on the blunt edge of the knife. "So ugly," Arbor muttered to herself. Her small hand touched the blade inch by inch and stopped for a moment. "Fu Sheng." "What?" Emolian paused and looked down at his wife's hand. "Fu Sheng." Arbor touched the blurry handwriting on the blade. Fu Sheng, Fu Sheng, Mo Lien murmured. Life is like a dream, but when you wake up from the dream, it's all in vain. Arbor put the blunt knife back into its sheath and held it tightly in his hand. My Jojo. Mo Lien reached out and hugged her slender waist. She sighed softly and said, Tomorrow, we will go back. Don't meddle in these matters anymore. Arbor lifted his head and looked at him seriously. After a long time, he shook his head. Mo Lien raised his eyebrows slightly. Not for anything else. Arbor put his hand over his heart and murmured softly, For you, for our parents and siblings, for our friends. I hope that the 3 prefectures will be stable, that the country will continue to exist, and that the world will be peaceful and prosperous. I don't want to see this world become hell on earth, just like the previous world. Who would be willing to experience the world of desolation and ruins after having seen the beautiful flowers in full bloom? We don't fight for others. We only fight for the well-being of our future generations. Mo Lien's eyes flickered. He reached out and cupped her small face. He nodded with a smile. Good, my Jojo is so good. Everything will be as you wish. What do you think Fu Sheng means? Arbor leaned against his chest and asked softly, How could the broken knife that her mother treasured so much be meaningless? Fu Sheng, what was Fu Sheng? Chapter 4363. The next day, the main hall of the Dragon Clan was filled with many people. Queen Qing Cheng sat on the left side and chatted with the clan leader, Long Qian, for less than 3 sentences when a servant announced their arrival. Long Qian looked up and saw the cold-faced little stoic entering hand in hand with a tall and slender black-clothed youth. They stood in the center of the hall. Jojo. Queen Qing Cheng stood up happily and hurried over to greet him. Xiaomu looked over. When she met her smiling gaze, her expression relaxed, and her lips involuntarily curled into a faint smile. Long Xiangyan saw this and hastily tugged on her brother's sleeve. Long Xiang felt a bit bitter inside. This little stoic was too hard to get along with. The siblings had interacted with this stoic face for so many days, but they had never seen her show such a sincere smile to them. Aunt Yi. Queen Qing Yi walked over and hugged her. She patted her shoulder. It's great that you're all okay. Aunt Yi, is there a transportation formation at the bottom of the sea that will send you away? Mu Xingchen couldn't help but ask. Qing Yi didn't hide it and nodded. This transportation formation was set up by your mother. It's been so many years. I didn't expect that it would come in handy one day. That time we were still young. We often met up and went to the Sea Valley to train together. Your mother found it troublesome, so she asked someone to set up a transportation formation so she could find me anytime. Qing Yi couldn't help but yearn for it when she talked about her childhood. In the blink of an eye, you're all grown up. That's all in the past. Jojo, Xing Chun. Yesterday? Yesterday was just a misunderstanding. Long Qian interrupted Queen Qing Ye's words. Arbor glanced at her coldly. Our mission this time is to set up and kill the Heavenly Fate battle group. Let's cut the crap. Previously, when Long Xiang discussed with us, what island did he say we would do it on? When Long Xiang heard the little crown princess calling his name, he hastily came out from the Long clan and nodded. Yes. The Dragon Clan is going to set up the base of the Celestial Fate Legion on Lisha Island. When everyone is gathered, we will begin the secret training. With half a year as the deadline, we, the Forgotten River Dragon Clan, will cooperate with the training of the 3 continents. Since that's the case, let's go together. Arbor turned to the queen and nodded. All right. Long Qian's face was cold the entire time. When she heard this, she couldn't help but say, Is this the only thing we can talk about? What else do you want to talk about? Arbor looked coldly at the dignified old lady. I want to talk to you in private, Long Qian said. That won't be necessary. Mo Yin directly refused and said with a cold expression, You just need to do as you said and provide that island. 10,000 elites from the Divine Prefecture should be able to reach the River of Forgetfulness in the next 2 days. There are 10,000 elites from the Tsang and Ming continent. They will probably arrive in 2 days. Mo Yin looked up at Long Qian and said, So, you just have to prepare yourself. After Long Qian was reprimanded by Prince Mo, she didn't get angry. Of course, she knew who these two people were. However, she had to talk to the little stoic face to face. No one could stop her. I know that you have opinions about me and the entire Long clan, Long Qian said coldly. Chapter 43-64. But there are many things that are not as simple as you children think. Back then, the Wangchuan region was attacked by you humans. How many people died and how many resources were lost? Don't you know? Tu Xianzi walked out of the crowd with his cane and snorted. That's all in the past. We won't pursue the matter, and we won't seek any justice. Instead, we want to form an alliance with you. Shouldn't you show some sincerity? Dear Tu Xianzi, is our sincerity not enough? The venerable peach blossom immortal waved the fan in his hand and looked at Tu Xianzi with a smile. We came all the way here from the land of the gods and accepted the alliance. What else do you want? Long Qian looked at Arbor seriously and said, I want to talk to you face to face. We have nothing to talk about. Arbor turned around and pulled Mo Lian out. Long Qian ordered coldly, stop them. Immediately, countless mermen guards swarmed in from outside and surrounded the two of them. Mo Lian turned around with a spurious smile to look at the frosty Long Qian. Clan Headlong, we advise you to be prudent and think thrice. Long Qian looked at Mo Lian coldly and turned to look at Arbor. However, he saw that the little girl's naturally cold face did not show any emotion. Only her dark eyes were staring at him coldly and silently. He felt a little scared. Long Qian took a deep breath and closed his eyes. He raised his hand slightly and said, I only need 15 minutes. You can leave once you're done. There's nothing that can't be said. Arbor's eyes were cold. If you have something to say, you can say it here. Are you sure? Long Qian couldn't help but be angry at the little girl's stubborn attitude. He raised his voice and shouted. Arbor nodded. Speak. If that's the case, then please, Antbai. Antbai. Long Qian and Long Shangyun couldn't help but interrupt by Ning Shuang. They looked at Long Qian anxiously with a serious expression. Grandmother, please calm down. Grandmother, why are you getting angry at the stoic face? She was born like that, expressionless to everyone. Didn't you see that she was also expressionless when facing her husband? It's not targeted at you, Long Shangyun said anxiously. Long Qian's furious gaze slowly calmed down. She stared at Arbor and said, This is a serious matter. I can only talk to you in private. A quarter of an hour should be enough. Arbor stared at her coldly for a moment, then took her husband's hand and walked out. Long Huan, how do I get to Lisha Island? Long Huan could not help but smile bitterly. At this time, she really did not want to be called by the little crown princess. Refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. Bai Ning Shuang's face was filled with anger, but she had nowhere to vent it. Thinking of her poor son, Long Ji's miserable state, she wished she could cut the woman in front of her into 1,000 pieces and pull out her tendons and bones. Her precious son was actually beaten up by a little bastard to the point that half of his body was paralyzed. How could she let such a vicious woman go today? Oh, it's so lively here. A light chuckle came from the door. The person was dressed in white. He was tall and slender, and his long hair hung loosely by his waist. As he walked over with a smile, it was as if there was a faint layer of light surrounding him. State Preceptor? Mo Lian and Arbor both murmured. Chapter 43-65. Didn't the State Preceptor say he was imprisoned? Wasn't the State Preceptor forcefully detained by the Mare people? Looking at this guy's unscathed appearance, could it be in order to survive, the State Preceptor shamelessly sought refuge with the Wangchuan Dragon Clan? Your Highness, Crown Princess, why are you two looking at me like that? The State Preceptor pretended his heart was thumping rapidly and raised his hand to calm his heart. Arbor's eyes were cold, like knives stabbing at the person in front of him, sizing him up. From the first time she met the State Preceptor, she felt that he was very strange, but there was also a sense of familiarity amidst the strangeness. They met several times at the palace banquets. He seemed to speak on her and the Crown Prince's behalf, but in fact, he was dragging them down time and time again. For example, at the beginning, When the elders of the divine continent rejected her marriage with Mo Lien, the state preceptor suggested that the wandering great elder make this decision. However, at that time, everyone thought that the unreliable great elder Kong In would not return so quickly. In the end, the old monk returned and gave everyone a huge surprise. Another example was suggesting to postpone the wedding date. Another example was requesting to see the crown prince and suggesting to bring the little crown princess along to the Wangchuan for a discussion. Each of these things were strange, seemingly unrelated, but in fact they were all directed at her. You are not the state preceptor. You are the snake beauty. You're Ding Ting Ding, Ding Yun. Sir Jojo suddenly realized. Once he said this, Mo Lien jumped in fright and subconsciously pulled his wife into his arms. The black moon sword suddenly flew out of his conscious and cautiously blocked in front of the two. Tisk, the state preceptor on the opposite side, lightly sked and shook his head, saying, Xiao Qiao, why do you look like you have seen a ghost? Aren't you a ghost? A ghost haunting you. All right, everyone, harmony breeds wealth. Don't draw your swords. The state preceptor walked over with a smile. He used two slender fingers to press down the sword of the mere people guard beside him and walked to Arbor, staring deeply at the black moon in front of him. I miss you, Xiao Qiao. Arbor looked at him expressionlessly. Why are you pretending to be the state preceptor? Because I want to see you. What else can it be for? Can't I see you whenever I want by pretending to be the state preceptor? The state preceptor blinked. Under everyone's gaze, that faces had a series of bone and muscle transformations. Soon, a face that was as beautiful as a flower appeared. She blinked her charming eyes and smiled at the two of them. Where's the state preceptor? State preceptor? What state preceptor? The original state preceptor. Xiao Mu practically didn't want to talk to him. Young Master Ding glanced at her with a smile and casually fiddled with his slender fingers. What an annoying person. He's not even willing to cooperate with me. I have no other choice but to let him die. You even searched his soul? His T-Tess, Master, T's, SS, how did you do it? Mo Yin's eyes were filled with shock. The state preceptor Ding Yun killed was a true expert, and he was about 200 years old. His cultivation was naturally deep. Ding Yun, this person, usually acted too well. Even his father did not discover the slightest clue. If Ding Yun conspired against the great emperor, Mo Lien was terrified as she thought about it, and felt a chill in her heart. Why are you wasting words with them? Bai Ning Shuang said angrily, Take him down. I've been very busy these few days. I'll probably be back to normal by Saturday. Chapter 43-66. Ding Yun glanced at Bai Ning Shuang indifferently. Oh, who are you to yell at me? Bai Ning Shuang choked at his words. Indeed, this punk had yet to be acknowledged by the Long clan. She was in no position to yell at him for help. But Bai Ning Shuang felt extremely indignant at being choked right in front of her face. A cold glint flashed in her eyes. One audacious brat. Recently, anyone in this family could really insult her to her face. She let this punk do it, but he was still spouting nonsense. He really didn't know what he was doing. Long Shangyun frowned. Why did you come out? Ding Yun ignored her. His beautiful eyes were smiling as he looked at Arbor. Little Qiao, why don't we find a place to talk? Sir Jojo glared at him coldly, then turned to look at Long Huan. His gaze was sharp and merciless. You've been hooking up with him for a long time? What did he mean by hooking up? Long Huan and young Master Ding wanted to roll their eyes at the same time. Why do these words sound so awkward? Cousin, you're thinking too much. Ding Yun took a step forward and said with a smile, Of course not. I'm not with them. We're the ones who are together. Arbor looked at him coldly. I met Sikong Fulling. Oh, I promised her to meet you. Cult Master Ding immediately beamed and nodded. That's great. Long Huan couldn't help but roll his eyes at young Master Ding. He dared to bet with his 20 years of intelligence that Sir Jojo's next words would definitely not satisfy young Master Ding. As expected, Arbor said coldly, Now that we've met, I've fulfilled my promise. Stay away from me in the future. Cult Master Ding was instantly flabbergasted. He stared at her for a long time. That means we've met? Are you blind? If this was a meeting, then what was? Xiao Mu grumpily rebuked him before turning to look at her husband. Mo Yin nodded knowingly, took her hand, and walked out. Young Master Ding was not angry. He waved his hand with a smile and ran out. Jojo, wait. I have something to tell you. Long Qian's face darkened as she watched them leave without looking back. Her face was extremely ugly. Bai Ning Shuang was flustered and exasperated. Aunt, are you going to let them leave just like that? Shut up. Long Qian had lived for so long, so she was naturally knowledgeable. With Bai Ning Shuang's current state, how could she not know? Wasn't it because of Longji's incident that he harbored a grudge against Xiao Mu and her husband? But with just her, Bai Ning Shuang, he really wasn't a match for that ferocious couple. You don't have to meddle in the affairs of the clan. Long Qian coldly looked up and glanced at Bai Ning Shuang. It's time for your son, Long Ji, to be educated. He's always talking about Chu Yun's past. Who gave him the guts to do that? Long Qian sneered. He doesn't act like one at all. As his mother, you don't even know how to correct his nonsense. Now that he's being beaten up, he deserves it. You don't have to blame others. Bai Ning Shuang couldn't help but feel resentful. Who in the entire Forget Creek doesn't know about Sister Chu Yun? Aunt, why are you saying this now? This was too unkind. This wasn't the first time she had said this. For so many years, the entire Forget Creek had been filled with stories about Long Chu Yun betraying the clan. Chapter 4367. They said that she watched helplessly as the Long family's cadet branch brought a large group of people to attack Wanchuan. They said that she stood by and did not care about the lives of her family members at all. In the end, didn't they say that she was cold, selfish, and had no concept of bloodline? Why? Now that her daughter had returned, the old lady wanted to push all the blame onto her son. Her son, Longji, was not the only one spreading this rumor. If the old lady really cared, why didn't she stop others from spreading it before? Why did she have to say this when her daughter returned? Bai Ning Shuang's lungs were about to explode from anger. Although she was full of complaints and wanted to explode, she had no choice but to swallow all her words when she saw Long Qian's solemn and cold face. Bai Ning Shuang bowed. Aunt, Longji may be reckless, but your granddaughter didn't go easy either. Longji is still lying on the bed and can't get up. Long Qian was already vexed about how to communicate with the little stoic face to face. Now that Bai Ning Shuang reprimanded her, she became even more indignant. It's not like you don't know what's the most important thing right now. Of course I know. Shui Yuan is so seriously ill. As her aunt, how can I not feel heartache? Bai Ning Shuang pretended to use a handkerchief to wipe the non-existent tears for the corners of her eyes. She sighed and said, However, Aunt, as you can see, your granddaughter isn't an easy person to get along with. Will she listen to us if we talk to her softly like this? Then what do you have in mind? Bai Ning Shuang's expression darkened as a hint of viciousness flashed across her eyes. Of course, we have to control them first. Once we have enough bargaining chips, we can discuss that matter with her. Isn't that right? Long Qian sneered. You're so naive. Bai Ning Shuang's face flushed red, and her lips quivered. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond to Long Qian. The Dragon Clan leader glared at Bai Ning Shuang coldly. Go back and watch over your son. Don't cause trouble for me. Bai Ning Shuang was intimidated by the Dragon Clan leader's stern tone. Although she was indignant, she could only return. When she returned to her own courtyard, she was even more displeased by the Dragon Clan leader's words. Seeing her son whining nonstop on the bed, Bai Ning Shuang's heart ached, and she gritted her teeth. Ah-chun, a nimble figure appeared in front of Bai Ning Shuang. The Kongkong's line. Ever since benefactress came to this river of forgetfulness, she seems to be even busier. We can only see each other a few times in a day. The little monk was wearing a small white monk robe. He was holding a lollipop in his mouth as he squatted under a peach tree, mumbling softly. Another moon-white figure squatted beside the little monk Kong Kong with a lollipop in her mouth. She couldn't help but shake her head and say, Kong Kong, do you miss my sister? The small monk pursed his small diamond-shaped lips and remained silent. Kong Kong's. To her, to be a. Kong Kong. Jolin sucked on a lollipop and said with a grin, "Actually, I've always been curious about something. Mrs. Sister, please tell me." Chapter 4368. The Peony Fairy and the Ginkgo Fairy, who were sitting not far behind this pair of adult and child, were leisurely snacking on melon seeds and drinking tea. When they heard their bizarre conversation, the corners of their mouths twitched uncontrollably. "You're so talkative, and my sister doesn't like to talk normally. How exactly do you two communicate?" The little monk, Kong Kong, lifted his large, watery eyes and brushed Xiao Lin an irritated glance. "What do you know?" Every time Kong Kong speaks, Benefactress listens attentively. Sigh. The little monk sighed in melancholy. He raised his small, shiny, bald head and gazed at the peach tree at a 45-degree angle. A large, bright red peach leaped into the little fellow's eyes, causing him to involuntarily click his tongue. This peach is so eye-catching on top of this little monk's head. Is it because this little monk wants to eat it? The little monk extended 2 chubby fingers and gestured at the starting distance. Unfortunately, Benefactress doesn't like to talk too much. She only opens her mouth when she's insulting someone. The little monk shook his head, and a fire spirit abruptly sprayed out from his chubby little hand. The large peach on top of his head was struck by the fire spirit and fell down. The little monk hugged his peach fully and contentedly, turning a deaf ear to the Benefactress's sister's guffaws. "Sister." Shaoliner jumped up. The little monk hastily looked up and saw the little stoic girl patter over from afar. Kong Kong's large eyes instantly turned round, and he subconsciously put the peach back into his inner world. Then, he broke into a run and ran toward the little stoic. "Benefactress." The little fellow pounced and latched onto her body. "Benefactress, Benefactress, you're finally back." The stoic expressionlessly pulled him off her body and lifted him up, exchanging glances with him. "You got fat again," the little stoic pointed out mercilessly. The little monk blinked. The lollipop in his mouth was still there, but his pair of large, adorable eyes were tinged with astonishment. "Benefactress, you're insulting me as soon as you open your mouth? Are you still my gentle and amiable benefactress?" "You're not." "Go, ta!" Shaolin squatted on the ground and couldn't help but slap her thigh as she guffawed. Looking at this little fat monk who was constantly thinking about his benefactress, in the end, when they met, he could only be mercilessly scolded. The small monk turned his head and glared at Jolin with an accusing gaze. Jolin hurriedly held back her laughter and waved her small hands. "Ah, sorry, I couldn't help it." Arbor looked at his sister, his gaze softening. "How is it?" Shaolin jumped up and spun a few rounds in front of her sister. "Sister, look." Arbor looked at her for a while and nodded. "Very good." Di Ling had broken through to the spirit realm and was now a second-ranked spirit master. Our dear Shaolin, who controlled the 9th layer spiritual water and innate water, summoned a ball of water mist with a wave of her small hand. She stood there charmingly and smiled at Xiao Mu the entire way. Arbor looked at her for a while, then took out a few bottles of pills from his inner world and handed them to his sister. "You don't have to be in a hurry to advance. Just stabilize your cultivation. These pills can help you stabilize your current realm, so don't be too anxious to advance." Jolin nodded repeatedly and took the pill bottles, storing them in her inner world. "Sister, I'll listen to you." Arbor was very satisfied and patted his sister's small head. Chapter 4369. Elder Sister, why did you come in at this time? Jolin asked with a smile. Arbor nodded. "Just now, I sensed a very strong fluctuation of divine power. Duanmu should be coming out of seclusion." As he spoke, everyone heard a long howl from afar. Arbor's eyes narrowed, and he ordered Qiuqiu, "Let him out quickly." Once Duanmu Qing left the outside world, he would have to undergo the 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation. Facts had proven that the heavenly Tao, this old thing, was indeed a judge of character. When Duanmu Qing was in the 5 spirit reincarnation cycle, there weren't so many problems. It was unlike the time when the heavenly Tao restricted Hao phase advancement and forcefully created the great tribulation of lightning and fire. This time, Duan Muqing had successfully completed the five spirits reincarnation tribulation in less than an hour. After going through the 5 levels of wood, lightning, water, fire, and earth, Duan Muqing successfully completed his advancement and became a grade 2 god tier master. Arbor, Yin, Hu Shichun, and the rest of the onlookers watched Duan Muqing from the front of the court until he completed his advancement. With such a big commotion, Long Ji and Long Xiangyun were urgently called over. When they saw Duan Muqing's current state, the two of them couldn't help but curse in their hearts what was going on. He was simply sick in the head. No wonder the seawater was churning and the entire underwater city was shaking. It turned out that someone was undergoing the 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation in their underwater spiritual realm. Arbor turned and saw the siblings' ugly expressions. He shook his head and said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, but Duan Muqing can't do anything about it." After all, as soon as he came out of the star domain, he was immediately targeted by the heavenly Tao's lightning tribulation. The heavenly Tao unleashed its might. The power of the 5 spirits passed through the seawater and rushed towards Duan Muqing. They could not stop it, could they? I thought something had happened. Long Huan looked at her speechlessly and said, "Our dwelling place can't withstand the power of the 5 spirits of the heavenly Tao." At this time, Duan Muqing had already completed his advancement. He slowly walked in front of Arbor with a faint smile in his eyes. He was already completely fine. The corpse poison that had previously been flowing through his body had now been completely removed. He had actually profited from the disaster and successfully advanced to the deity realm. In terms of cultivation, he had advanced by leaps and bounds. Arbor glanced at him. Thinking of how this guy had cut off his own wrist, he felt a little angry for no reason. They all lowered their heads to look at her. The little stoic's face was cold and expressionless as she turned around to leave. Duan Muqing could not help but smile bitterly. Jojo is still angry. It's obvious. Yin glanced at him and was about to say something when a muffled dong sound came from afar. Then a howl was heard. Everyone was shocked, and they hastily chased after Qiaomu. From afar, he saw the little girl expressionlessly holding a vine whip and fighting with a person in front of her. Her silhouette was extremely fast, and the speed of her attacks was so fast that it made people feel a little dazzled. 1 second, she was still in front of that person. The next second, she had already teleported behind that person. The moment she appeared, she slashed towards that person's neck. Long Ji and Long Xiangyun's hearts jumped violently. The little girl's savagery was probably one of a kind. She simply could not be bothered to waste words with whoever attacked her. She also did not ask for the reason and directly counterattacked fuck. Quickly stop. Long Xiangyun couldn't help but exclaim when she saw this person's face clearly. Chapter 4370. Eldest brother, it's Ah-chan. He's Madame Bai's. Long Xiangyun hastily tugged at Long Qian's sleeve. Long Qian's face alternated between green and white. He laughed bitterly in his heart, wishing for nothing more than to flick his sleeves and leave immediately. What the heck was going on? This second aunt, could it be that she couldn't use her brain before doing something? He didn't believe that grandmother ordered this. It must be Bai Ningxuang herself who came to stir up trouble for the sake of avenging her son, Long Ji. In this way, his little stoic cousin would definitely loathe their Long family even more. This was simply adding fuel to the fire. Ah-chun's movements were very nimble. He roared and retreated a step, barely avoiding the little stoic's startling swan blade. "You're courting death." An apathetic expression hung on the stoic face. With a slight flick of her wrist, several cold glints flew toward Ah-chun's face. "Hurry and dodge!" Long Xiangyun shouted angrily. The Long family disciples who were originally going to help hastily retreated. In the blink of an eye, a series of explosions came from the unlucky Ah-chun's body. Bang, 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 bang. Bang, 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 bang. His entire body was immediately covered in blood, and his body was blasted to pieces. Long Qian's heart chilled. He inwardly thought that these concealed weapons were very powerful. Even Ah-Chun, a level 10 spirit realm cultivator, didn't have the slightest ability to ward them off. It could be imagined how terrifying these things were. "Cousin, please," before Long Qian could finish speaking, he saw the little stoic fly up and use startling swan blade. A cold glint sharply slid past Ah-Chun's neck. A faint line of blood drew open on that person's neck, and in a flash, a whole head fell to the ground. This back and forth was merely a matter of minutes. Long Shangyun shuddered all over and looked up at the little stoic. She was untainted by a speck of dust. Her plain clothes were as white as snow, and her bright eyes shone brightly. Her pitch-black pupils seemed to be leaping with sparks, so scorching that it was almost impossible to look straight at them. "The Long family is very good." Arbor threw down this sentence coldly and walked toward the entrance. "Since you want to start a war, then let's fight." No, 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 no. That's not it." Long Shangyun muttered to herself. Long she hurriedly chased after her and cried out, "Cousin, it's a misunderstanding. It's really a misunderstanding. Madame Bai acted on her own accord. It was not my grandmother's idea." "Is there a difference?" Arbor suddenly turned his head and looked at him coldly. Long Huan choked for a moment. He suddenly felt that there was no difference whether it was Madame Bai's men or his grandmother's orders. After all, his aunt was a member of the Dragon Clan. Everything she did represented the Dragon Clan. Long Yin took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, cousin. Don't get angry first. I will immediately report this matter to the Patriarch and let her deal with it. Okay? Cripple her," Arbor said coldly. Just now, that servant called Ah-Chun snatched her eyes without a second word. If it weren't for that, how could she have retaliated so ruthlessly? Mo Lien quickly walked up and pulled Arbor to examine her from head to toe with a frown. She turned to look at Long Qian and said coldly, "Bai Ning Shuang must die. If she doesn't die, then all of you can die." The man's voice was as cold as ice without any room for negotiation. He raised his hand, and countless black figures appeared from all directions. They raised their arms and shouted, "Die, die, die." Chapter 4371. Long Huan's expression naturally appeared extremely unsightly. Normally, they didn't see many people appear beside the Crown Prince. Most of the Dragon Clan's attention was placed on those 100 Phoenix clansmen with high cultivation, who knew that no less than 1,000 people would pounce out when the Crown Prince casually waved his hand. Looking closely at his finger, these black-clothed attendants were released from a space ring. They heard that His Highness the Crown Prince was a rare divine artifact master, and that ring should be a space artifact that could store life. Long Shangyun wanted to go up and say something, but her elder brother pulled her back and stopped her steps. Long Huan's complicated gaze landed on Arbor, and he sighed deeply. "Madame Bai Shi Long Huan," Mo Lien coldly interrupted him. "Ever since you stepped into the river of forgetfulness, think carefully. How many people have tried to cause trouble for Jojo, and how many people have ulterior motives? Even if you want to be a peacemaker, you have to see if the conditions allow it." Long Huan felt a chill run down his spine when he was stared at by the Crown Prince's bone-chilling phoenix eyes. "Who is Bai Ning Shuang to dare come here and stir up trouble?" Mo Yin coldly said, "Go. Since the Dragon Clan of Forgetfulness can't bear to lay a hand on this woman, go and bring her here." "Yes." The Purple Forest Guard leader cupped his fists after receiving the order and immediately left with a group of black-clothed youths. "You." Long Shangyun's expression shifted, and she hastily went up to stop them. "Crown Prince, this is the river of forgetfulness. Don't long-winded." Prince Mo interrupted Long Shangyun's incessant chatter. His phoenix eyes were abnormally chilly, like the clear splendor of a cold moon. "What's going on?" "I just went over to take care of some trivial matters." "Long Huan, why are you arguing with Jojo again?" A giggling voice came from afar. Everyone turned to look and saw young Master Ding, who was dressed in a purple robe, walking along the flowery path. With a gentle breeze, fragmented osmanthus flowers fell one after another, sprinkling on his hair, body, and feet, covering the ground in a faint golden hue. So ugly, The little stoic expressionlessly said, "Everyone, can you be any more dishonest than you already are? Regardless of whether this young man in purple is standing in the crowd or in the bustling world, he is not inferior to your husband and the venerable peach blossom immortal, right? Flirting. Don't know what you're talking about," Arbor said coldly. Hu Shurchun was speechless, coquettish and pretentious. Emollient, naturally seductive and pretentious. Cough, cough, cough. Mu Xingchen and Holy Sun Mi Yin couldn't help but cough. Long Shang Yun speechlessly turned to a certain facial paralysis whose words kept popping out. Truthfully speaking, she couldn't bear the sight of Ding Yun's actions as well. But at the very least, she wasn't blind, so it was naturally impossible for her to connect Ding Yun with the words ugly as hell and the pile of criticism that followed. Just how much did Sir Jojo dislike the person in front of him? Long Huan silently glanced at the little girl and then looked at Ding Yun with sympathy. He suddenly felt that compared to this young and handsome young master that Sir Jojo disliked so much, at least he wasn't as loathsome. Ding Yun walked over and stopped in front of Arbor and the others. He asked with a smile, "Jojo, is Long Huan looking for trouble with you?" Long Huan couldn't help but roll his eyes. Didn't he receive enough lessons on this journey? Did he have nothing better to do than to find trouble with the little stoic? Chapter 43-72. Xiao Mu's small face was stoic as she coldly gazed at him without uttering a word for a long time. "What's your relationship with the Long family? Why didn't they kill you when you barged into the Dragon Clan's sacred grounds?" Emollient suddenly asked. When Ding Yun heard this, he casually glanced at the man and snorted. "Take a guess." Long Huan's explanation was that the state advisor had barged into the Dragon Clan's sacred grounds and had been detained. This should be true, but now, Ding Yun was able to walk out of the dungeon without permission. Therefore, there must be something that they didn't know about. Long Huan looked at Ding Yun with a complicated gaze and sighed. He turned to Emollient and said, "Crown Prince, you may not know, but this young Master Ding is actually why are you capturing me? Let me go. Let me go. How dare you be so impudent in the land of the Wangchuan tribe?" A sharp female voice suddenly interrupted Long Huan, causing him to frown. This voice was so sharp that it almost pierced everyone's eardrums. It was extremely uncomfortable to listen to. The Purple Forest Guards brought forward a woman who was struggling with all her might and screaming in anger. Bai Ning Shuang's hairpins were disheveled, her makeup was dull, and her crimson robes were wrinkled. She was in a sorry state. "Behave yourself." One of the Purple Forest Guards gave her a heavy slap on the back of her shoulder, causing Bai Ning Shuang to squeal. "Noisy." Arbor frowned in displeasure. Crown Prince Imo glanced at him coldly, and the Purple Forest Guard punched Bai Ning Shuang's back forcefully. Madame Bai cried out in shock. She lost her balance and fell to the ground. She was in so much pain that she couldn't speak. Bai Ning Shuang struggled to get up, but someone stepped on her back and pinned her down. She angrily raised her head and stared coldly at Emollient and the others. She said angrily, "You dare?" Emollent's gaze shifted as he coldly observed from the sidelines without saying anything. The Purple Forest Guard had a good understanding of his master's personality. Even the slightest of glances would be immediately understood. Without another word, the long sword in his hand slashed towards Bai Ning Shuang's neck. Clang! A curved blade spirit artifact that was spinning through the air abruptly collided with the Purple Forest Guard's long sword, instantly parrying his sword strike. Arbor turned to look. Long Qian came with a group of a few hundred mermaids with a cold expression. Arbor subconsciously raised his hand and touched the little white snake coiled around his wrist. A pair of cold and emotionless eyes stared coldly at Long Qian, and there wasn't the slightest trace of warmth in them. "Everyone, listen to my order," the little stoic ordered icily. "Here, those who stop me will be killed without mercy." "Yes." Long Qian's eyes narrowed slightly. Arbor raised her hand and summoned the thunderclap sword. The spinning barb gently slid through the air. A sharp light flashed past by Ning Shuang's eyes. After a blood-curdling scream, Bai Ningshuang reached out with a trembling hand and held her bloodshot eyes. She screamed in terror and panic. You! A trace of disbelief flitted across Long Qian's solemn face. She couldn't help but size up the little girl in white clothes who was as cold as ice. In her body, he could really see a trace of his daughter, Long Chuyun, back then. However, it was just a trace. The little girl wasn't Long Chuyun. She didn't have Long Chuyun's good temper. Chapter 4373. Unlike Long Chuyun's patience, this little girl was very calculative. Whenever someone offended her, she would take revenge on the spot. It seemed impossible for her to hold her breath and endure it in secret. Long Qian took a deep breath and looked down at Bai Ningshuang, who was kneeling by Arbor's feet with her hair in a mess. Now that you've punished her, can you hand her over to me? Emo Yin couldn't help but sneer. Do you think it's that easy? The long sword in the purple forest guard's hand pressed down on Bai Ningshuang's shoulder, causing her to bend over. Long Qian said coldly. Bai Ningshuang was the one who made the first move. She didn't think it through and did something wrong. However, the two of you have already punished her. She lost her eyes, so let's end this here. Emo Yin stared at Long Qian coldly. Who do you think you are? What kind of tone and attitude are you using to talk to me? You don't have the right to decide how to end this. I have the right to decide. Long Qian's breath was stuck in her chest, and she didn't know what to say. Long Qian quickly stepped forward and said in a low voice, Forget Chuan invited the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess here to form the Celestial Fate Legion. At this moment, we should be united against the enemy instead of fighting among ourselves. Arbor kicked Bai Ningshuang, who was in a pitiful state, to Long Qian's feet. He turned around and said coldly, I'm tired. Lisha Island is ready. You can go there at any time. Long Qian let out a sigh of relief. Bai Ningshuang stood up while trembling. Suddenly, she stood up and grabbed the green scepter in the old madam's hand. Long Qian's eyes turned cold. Just as she was about to scold her, Bai Ningshuang turned around with the scepter in her hand and slapped the fist-sized black pearl on top of the scepter. Long Qian's eyes changed. She couldn't help but yell, Bai Ningshuang, you! An ink-colored halo of light instantly emerged from the scepter. Then, the brilliant light shone brightly and covered everyone on the scene. Everyone was bewildered as they looked up at the inky brilliance that had enveloped the entire realm. The Mare people, the Purple Forest Guards, the Phoenix Clan members, and even Emo Yin, Mu Xingqian, and the others in Arbor were all enveloped in the dim light of the night. They looked around in confusion. They thought that the ink light would attack them indiscriminately. However, in reality, no one felt any discomfort in their bodies. They felt as if this domain was natural, and it was just blocking this space. What's going on? Feng Zhangfei looked around blankly. Why are you protecting us? Do you want to fight? Feng Zhangqing raised his hand to stop the group of Feng brothers who were ready to make a move. He looked at Emo Yin with a puzzled gaze. While holding Qiao Mu's small hand, Emo Yin was in the midst of vigilantly inspecting their surroundings when he suddenly felt the little fellow's small hand tighten around his. He looked down and saw that his Jojo's face was slightly pale. Large beads of sweat rolled down from her temples. Her slender body was swaying as if she couldn't even stand properly. Jojo! Everyone saw that she was different from usual and quickly gathered around her. Arbor felt that the Divine Ruins realm was abnormal, and he couldn't suppress it. His body swayed a few times, and Mo Yin reached out to hold him, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 4374. Jojo. Mo Yin was greatly alarmed, and her expression changed drastically. Jojo, Hu Shichun, Mu Xingqian, and the others' expressions also changed. What was going on? Everyone was normal, but Jojo was the only one who became like this. So Bai Ningshuang's actions just now were targeted at Jojo. She touched the black pearl on the old madam's scepter. Everyone supported Jojo in a flurry, and their gazes all turned to Long Qian. They discovered that Long Qian's face was also deathly pale. She cut her fingertip and dripped a thick drop of blood onto the black pearl, as if she was trying her best to suppress something. However, she couldn't suppress it at all. Long Qian's fingers were bleeding, and she tightly pressed down on the black pearl and the scepter. Her body trembled along with the trembling black pearl. "Grandmother!" Long Shangyun and Long Qian shouted at the same time. With a wave of their hands, they led countless mermen forward and used their spiritual energy to assist the old madam in suppressing the restless black pearl. Uft. Arbor spat out blood again, and her body involuntarily slid to the ground. Prince Mo panicked and reached out to grab her waist, hugging her as she slid down. He propped himself up on one knee and said in a trembling voice, "Jojo, Jojo." Arbor felt the ruins of God ripple heavily, and even her conscience began to tremble in pain. She lowered her head with difficulty, and a flickering light secretly flowed in the depths of the little stoic's scarlet eyes. Younger sister, Mu Xingqian shouted in panic. Everyone followed the little stoic's gaze and simultaneously looked down, only to see a white luster flickering at her lower abdomen. The strange thing was that the ball of light rolled through her body inch by inch. When it reached her abdomen and reached her heart, it was as if it was about to roll through her slender body and fly out of her mouth. Mo Yin and Hu Shiqin were the quickest to react. They raised their hands and sent 2 bursts of sacred energy over, stopping the ball of white light from flying out. Mo Yin's fingertips moved slightly as she sent out several strands of saint power into Arbor's body. Hu Shiqin quickly helped her suppress her restless conscience. While everyone was busy dealing with Xiao Qiao's strange behavior, they heard Long Qian's suppressed roar from the other side. Hold on. However, Long Shangyun, Long Shi, and the others could not suppress the black pearl at all. Holding on for 2 minutes was already their limit, following which he was violently sent flying by a violent force. Long Qian spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed on the ground. In the blink of an eye, the black pearl suddenly transformed into a long black shadow that spiraled in the air and emitted a furious roar that shook the heavens and the earth. The black dragon claw suddenly came down from the sky and went straight for Jojo's heart. That gigantic dragon claw exuded an incomparably terrifying pressure. The pupils of Mo Lien, He Jiechen, Mu Xingqian, and the others shrank. The pressure of a saint beast? Such a terrifying aura. I'm afraid it's the aura of a middle mature stage holy beast, right? A golden light flashed and disappeared. Seventh Yin, who had clearly grown a lot taller and had a much more mature face, suddenly jumped out of Prince Mo's space. He raised his hand and transformed it into a dragon claw, blocking a black dragon claw that swooped down at him. The youth frowned and grunted. While blocking the black dragon claw, he was forced to retreat several steps. "Little Seven, come back." Mo Yin's low and magnetic voice rang out. He did not summon Seventh Yin just now. It was his brat who jumped out first to block the attack when he saw the situation was critical. Chapter 4375. However, although Xiaoqi had already entered the late stage of puberty, she couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as a mature holy beast. That black dragon was merely a translucent soul. Even Xiaoqi was barely able to withstand its attack. If it was allowed to fully recover, everyone here would be in deep trouble. At this time, Mo Yin and Zhichun had already completely understood. What was on Long Qian's staff wasn't a black pearl at all. Instead, it was a sealing pearl. This black dragon had been sealed inside the black pearl by someone using a special method. Presumably, many years had passed since then. It was currently in a translucent soul state. However, it was clear that as long as it absorbed enough holy power, it could still slowly recover its physical form. Arbor was half lying in Emolien's arms. She couldn't make a sound. She hung her head listlessly, allowing the blood at the corner of her mouth to drip onto the sandy ground. "Jojo." Emolien hurriedly lifted her up a little and reached out to support her head. At the same time, the Peony Fairy, Little Tai Sui, and the others had already flown out of Paradise Planet. Without another word, they rushed to He Qin's side and began to fight with the black dragon. Bai Ning Shuang laughed heartily. She reached out to touch the air in front of her and repeatedly shouted, "How is it? How is it?" Did the thing inside already kill that stoic face? Long Shangyun covered her shoulder that had almost left after being patted. She glared angrily at Bai Ning Shuang. Second aunt, did you hit your head on the ground? How could you open grandmother's restriction seal? Ha ha! Bai Ning Shuang turned a deaf ear to Long Shangyun's angry shout. She reached out to touch the air in front of her, wanting to grab someone and ask about the current situation. Second aunt. Long Shangyun's expression changed. Just as she called out the words second aunt, she saw the translucent black dragon rush down. The dragon coiled its body and swept its tail heavily. Bai Ning Shuang, who was lying on the ground, was sent flying by the black dragon's tail and heavily smashed into the ground. How could her body withstand a holy beast attack? He didn't even manage to catch his breath before he breathed his last. Second aunt, Long Shangyun exclaimed in shock. Suddenly, she felt her arm lighten. She turned around and saw Long Huan pulling her back several steps until they reached a safe place. Brother, what about second aunt? Long Huan shook his head helplessly. She opened the black dragon's seal without permission. I'm afraid this matter will not end well. Long Shangyun turned around and patted the black light barrier. She hammered it twice and clenched her fists. We can't get out. Sacred beast barrier. Do you think anyone can get out? At this moment, everyone had already helped old Madame Long Qian to the siblings' side. Grandmother, how are you? Long Qian shook his head slightly and coughed twice. His gaze turned towards Arbor, and he roared, Mu Qiao, you. Quickly summon it to suppress it. Jojo. Jojo. Mo Yin saw that she kept her head down and felt inexplicably uneasy. He held her waist and reached out to lift her chin slightly. As soon as he saw her, he was shocked. His Jojo's eyes were red with blood. It was as if he couldn't see anything alive in his eyes. Jojo. Mo Yin was stunned and wanted to hug her. However, the little girl pushed his arm away. She stood up with a blank and cold expression. Her gaze landed on the black dragon that was roaring in the sky. In her tumultuous conscience, there was a terrifying fluctuation. Chapter 4376. If she could look inside herself right now, she would definitely be able to see that the snake sculpture in her inner world was cracking apart inch by inch under the repeated fluctuations of her consciousness, revealing sections of black scales that were engraved with profound runes. When Long Qian saw her standing there in a daze without moving, she couldn't help but shout anxiously, Mu Qiao, what are you waiting for? Hurry up! Arbor's body suddenly trembled, and a huge wave of pressure suddenly emanated from her body, rushing toward the black dragon in midair. Bam! Seventh Yin pulled back his tail that had hit the black dragon and turned to look at his master's wife in surprise. This little girl's body actually emitted a trace of an ancient sacred beast pressure. She had many sacred beasts around her, but most of them were sacred beasts in their growth stage. Compared to this half-soul sacred beast in front of her, they couldn't be compared at all. But now, the sacred beast pressure that was seeping out of her body had an unprecedented sense of oppression. In the blink of an eye, a pitch-black dragon abruptly broke free from the snake sculpture and flew out of Qiao Mu's inner world to protect its master. It swiped its claw at the black dragon in midair. Roar! The merfolk stared dumbfoundedly at the three dragons that were fighting inside the sacred beast barrier. Their ferocious and terrifying power would occasionally hit one or two innocent merfolk passers-by, turning them into a pile of dust. Cries of agony came from behind Long Qian. All the merfolk felt that they were unlucky to be involved in a fight between three giant dragons. How unlucky must one be to experience such a thing and be deeply troubled by it? At this time, Hu Shurchen, little Tai Sui, and the others had already returned to Arbor's side. How is it? The crown prince had tried to get close to his wife countless times, but every time he was pushed back by his little wife without any hesitation. Hushurchin looked up and saw that the crown prince's handsome face looked as if there was nothing left to live for. Stop fooling around. Her conscience should be in a mess right now, right? For some reason, the energy in her body is also in a mess. Let's calm down the divine energy in her veins first. Hushurchin tugged at Imo Yin and said, how could Imo Yin not know this in her heart? But even if she wanted to appease him, she had to get close to him. Jojo wouldn't even let him get close to him, which made him very anxious. Moreover, the blood-patterned black dragon that came out of Jojo's body was also very strange. Where did it come from? These people stayed in Xiao Xiao Star Field every day. He knew very well what kind of holy beasts there were in the star field, and how many of them there were. But where did this dragon come from? Although the blood-patterned black dragon was a mature holy beast, it was a pity that it had just reached the early stages of maturity. If it joined forces with Shao Qi, they would be able to stop the brutal black dragon. But as time passed, it was hard to say. After all, no one knew how many years it had been asleep. Now that it had just broken out of the seal of the sculpture, it had yet to fully adapt. Long Qian used her scepter to knock on the sacred beast barrier behind her with a deep frown. She abruptly turned to Qiao Mu and said, Mu Qiao, what are you still hesitating for? Why are you in a daze? Quickly summon that thing to deal with the black dragon. If the sacred beast realm is not broken, we will all be innocently affected. Hurry up and break it. Break it. The mare people couldn't help but roar angrily. Long Qian's gaze was serious as he stared at Arbor without blinking. The latter turned a deaf ear to the many complicated roars around him. His gaze only landed on the black dragon's half-soul that was roaring in the air. As if it was summoned by something, it opened its small mouth and a bright white pearl flew out. Chapter 4377. 10,000-year-old Shark Pearl. Shark Pearl, it's the 10,000-year-old Shark Pearl. It's the real 10,000-year-old Shark Pearl. The genuine 10,000-year-old Shark Pearl. The 10,000-year-old Shark Pearl that had been polished and tempered by countless seniors was actually in this little stoic's body. Why? This thought bubbled up in the merfolk's minds. It's Long Chuyin. It must be eldest Miss Long Chuyin who gave it to her. Long Qian, Long Shangyun, Long Qian, and all the mermaids were staring at the round jade bead in the air at the same time. Their eyes were burning with passion. Everyone stared fixedly at the round pearl that had abruptly leaped into the air, their emotions surging. They involuntarily straightened their bodies, wishing for nothing more than to pounce on it and grab it. Imo Lian, He Jiechin, and the others' eyes flickered. They glanced at the white pearl before looking back at Jojo. Arbor had completely lost consciousness at this time. He was only relying on his instincts to control the jade pearl to fly back and forth, up and down. The god power roaming in his body was wandering randomly through his meridians, and he couldn't control it for the time being. The little stoic's entire body shook. She clenched her fists and roared at the sky with all her might. She abruptly turned around, her eyes red as she coldly stared at the black dragon fighting in the air. That pure white pearl, emitting a jade-colored light, flew to the black dragon with a whoosh with a flick of her finger and fiercely tangled with it. White light exploded. As though this wasn't the pearl's first time fighting the black dragon, it was abnormally ferocious. She didn't care about the other two dragons and only focused on smashing the black dragon's head countless times. Every time it landed, it would cause the black dragon's half-soul to dim slightly. The black dragon roared, and its body flipped and smashed furiously in the air. The lightning it spat out attacked indiscriminately, instantly killing several merfolk. This sudden turn of events caused the merfolk to struggle out of their daze as though they had just woken up from a dream. They all cried out in alarm and dodged in all directions. Hurry and open this barrier. We can't get out of the sacred beast barrier. Why do you talk so much nonsense? The peony fairy sneered and waved the thunder pestle in her hand. If you can't get out, then die. So much nonsense that it's annoying. One of the mermen glared at the peony fairy and said angrily, How can you say that? If you don't have the ability, then shut up and wait for someone to save you. If you spout any more nonsense, this old lady will summon lightning to strike you to death right now." The merman immediately shrank back behind Long Hua, glaring at the peony fairy but not daring to say anything. "Mu Qiao stole our race's sacred artifact, the 10,000-year mermaid pearl," a merman said indignantly. "She should return it." "Yes, it should be returned." Emolian was already in a bad mood. Hearing those mermaids and mermen's nonsensical words, she coldly glanced at the crowd. When he smiled, his eyes seemed to sparkle like a sky full of stars. When he was incomparably cold, it made people feel fearful and timid. The merfolk who were hooting instantly froze on the spot when she glared at them. Their muttering voices also quieted down. "Get into formation," Emolian ordered coldly. A group of purple forest guards immediately stepped forward to protect the crown prince. They formed a formation and moved forward. The thousand-face shield instantly erected in front of them, protecting them from the indiscriminate attacks that the black dragon threw at them from time to time. Emolian beckoned with her hand, and Seventh Yin immediately flew to her side. Chapter 4378. This black dragon was in a half-soul state, so their attacks were completely useless against its half-soul body. Everyone could only continuously use their spiritual energy to attack, but most of them were repelled by its enormous sacred power. They could barely move. Emolian stared coldly at the black dragon in front of her. With a wave of her hand, several pitch-black flames rustled down and flew onto the black dragon's body. Like exploding fireworks, they boisterously exploded on the black dragon's half-transparent soul body. The black dragon was originally about to flee like a rat after being beaten by the sharp pearl. Now that it was immobilized by the pearl's light and struck by the sacred power that Emolian and the others flung over, its half-soul body became increasingly illusory and scattered, and it was on the verge of collapse. When the merfolk saw this, they instantly rushed forward while shouting and wrangling. "Hurry! It can't hold on any longer. Get ready. Get the sealing pearl ready and seal it again." Ah! As if struggling on its deathbed, the black dragon abruptly swooped down and spat out a mouthful of furious lightning at those clamoring merfolk. The impact immediately scattered the group, and the merfolk scrambled and wailed as they scattered. The sharp pearl's jade-like and serene light enveloped the earth, emitting a sacred, flawless, and transparent light. At this moment, the black dragon that was firmly trapped by the light was roaring angrily, as if it was extremely unresigned. Its eyes were wide open, and its tail flipped and swayed. The flawless white light pressed down on that black dragon's illusory body and wrapped it up in balls. Not good. The 10,000-year-old sharp pearl is going to capture the black dragon. Clan leader. Clan leader. The merfolk shouted anxiously. "What should we do now?" "What do you mean, what should we do?" "That sharp pearl is our river of forgetfulness's sacred item to begin with, and the black dragon is also a suppressed guardian beast." Right. If the sharp pearl captures the black dragon, then so be it. As long as the crown princess returns the sharp pearl to us. Ah! Arbor, who was in the divine ruin realm, suddenly roared at the sky. Ah! At the same time, the shark pearl, which was bursting with sacred white light, abruptly contracted and swallowed the entire black dragon. It flew out with a whoosh and swiftly flew into the little stoic's mouth. Chow chow. Emolian and the rest turned pale with fright as they rushed over. However, a white light flashed in Xiao Mu's hand, and like a sudden clap of thunder, it carved out a deep ravine in front of her, blocking Emolian, Zhichun, and the others' footsteps. At this moment, Arbor seemed to have entered a berserk state. His eyes were red, and there was no one in his eyes. She turned her head around, her scarlet eyes filled with killing intent as she glared at the fearful merman in front of her. Long Qian's heart skipped a beat, and she quickly shouted, "Quick! Disperse!" At the same time, a thunderous sword might swept toward the mermaids with the terrifying power of lightning. The explosive force spread out in all directions, sending the few mermaids in the front row flying and crashing heavily onto the ground. They clutched their chests and vomited blood. "Joe Arbor!" Long she shouted in shock. Young Master Ding's expression changed slightly, and he quickly flashed away. His eyes flickered, and he stopped to look in Arbor's direction. At this moment, the latter stopped to catch his breath and slightly raised his head, sweeping his cold gaze over Long Qian and the others. Long Qian's heart skipped a beat. Long Shi reflexively tightened his grip on the long sword in his hand and stuttered, "Co-cousin, calm down." Xiao Mu's eyes were blank as she wielded her sword. Wisps of water, spiritual energy accumulated on her sword, and in a split second, it streaked through the air toward Long Qian and the others with an unstoppable momentum. Chapter 43-79. Oh no, she can't control the sharp pearl in her body. The power belonging to the sharp pearl in her body is starting to go berserk. "Scatter!" Long Qian shouted, his old face instantly flushing red. Who would dare to clash head-on with the thunderclap sword? Horror flitted across their faces, and following Long Qian's angry shout, they hastily dodged in all directions. Thousands of thunderclaps galloped past like a magnificent army. At the bottom of the river of forgetfulness, the entire Long clan's residence was greatly shaken. The commoner merfolk outside the spirit realm also more or less felt the turbulent waves rolling above their heads, and they hastily found a place to hide. At this time, the little stoic stood alone in front of the thousands of ravines at the bottom of the sea, her body emitting a dazzling white light. Her fists were tightly clenched, and her bones creaked. She suddenly roared into the sky, and a terrifying force exploded from her body. Everywhere the white light covered, flowers and trees shattered into fine powder. The holy beast barrier that had been set up by the black dragon also completely shattered with a bang. Mo Lien, He Chun, and the others couldn't even get close, let alone the others. Everyone simultaneously raised their hands to block the dazzling white light in front of them. When the white light finally scattered, they saw the little stoic with her back facing them. Her shoulders trembled weakly, and she suddenly spat out another mouthful of blood. Her body weakly slid to the ground. With a clang, the thunderclap, sword in her hand, fell to the ground without her noticing. Jojo, Crown Prince Mo's heart was on the verge of shattering. With a flash, he flew across a deep crevice in front of him and caught her falling body. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, Holy Sun Mian, Little Tai Sui, Mu Xingqian, and the others also rapidly surrounded them. When they looked down, they saw the little fellow's eyes were tightly shut, her long eyelashes were trembling, her lips were tightly pursed, and her face was as pale as a sheet. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's heart sank, and his breathing quickened. He hastily grabbed Mo Yen. Quick, suppress the sharp pearl in her godly ruins first. The sharp pearl was so powerful that it was only temporarily stabilized by the combined efforts of all the Transcendence Realm experts present. Long Qian supported herself with a long staff as she struggled to walk towards Mo Lien and the others. She said anxiously, "We have to think of a way to get the sharp pearl out. She can't control her body at all." Previously, it was Chu Yun who took the initiative to seal the mermaid pearl in her body. When the power of the mermaid pearl awakens, her body will not be able to withstand it, nor will she be able to control it. It must be taken out immediately. What a load of nonsense! Mo Yin and Ji Chun were both enraged. They each threw out a fire spirit and a wood spirit. The powerful Saint Power rushed towards the old woman who could not stand steadily. "Grandmother!" Long she exclaimed from behind. Long Qian's eyes narrowed, and she quickly turned around to dodge. She barely dodged a fire spirit when the wood spirit viciously hit her in the chest. Pooh! The old woman spat out a mouthful of blood, but her gaze was still extremely stubborn. What I said is true. If you leave the mermaid pearl in her body, it will be like leaving a Saint Power pearl that will explode at any given time. You speak as if it's true. Who are you trying to fool? Feng Zhangfei could not help but say angrily. If that black dragon sealing pearl was not suddenly broken by someone, why would the mermaid pearl lose control on the spot in order to suppress it? Why are we wasting our breath on them? Let's go, the peony fairy said angrily. Yin carried Arbor with both hands. After taking 2 steps, she turned around and looked at Long Qian coldly. She said in a low voice, "You knew about it from the start, didn't you?" Chapter 4380. So this time, you did everything possible to lure her back, not because clan leader Long has 1 foot in the grave and is in a hurry to see your granddaughter. It's because you want this shark pearl. Yin's breathing was labored, and she did her best to suppress the boiling fury in her heart. When she spoke, her voice was laced with grief and anger, so gloomy that it was heartbreaking. The dragon clan of Wang Chuan is truly disgusting. The peony fairy, Fairy Ginkgo, and the others glared fiercely at the dragon clan members before hastily following her. Long Qian coughed dully as she stared emotionlessly in the direction they left. "Grandmother, grandmother." Long Qian called out twice and couldn't resist letting out a long sigh. "Grandmother, why are you doing this?" Young Master Ding suddenly chuckled. He turned around and waved his hand, laughing loudly as he left. The dragon clan of Wang Chuan is truly disgusting. Ha 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 ha. Long Qian angrily glared at his back and clutched her aching heart. Let's go back first. Yin was extremely fast. She carried Arbor back to Yun Court in a flash and placed him on the bed. Jojo was unconscious, and her Danton, Godly Ruins realm, and conscious were both sealed, so she naturally couldn't communicate with Qiao. Water's here, water's here. Give it to me." Yin took the half-wet handkerchief from Fairy Ginkgo and carefully wiped the blood from the corners of the little stoic's lips. Her fingers trembled slightly. Everyone disperse first. Ma Shichen turned around and glanced at Feng Chongqing and the others. "Don't crowd around here. Go back and prepare. When Jojo wakes up, we'll leave this place." Yin raised her small hand and wiped the bloodstains on her fingers. The blood on her hand was rarely other people's. It was all blood that she spat out. It was very glaring and gripped one's heart. Jojo's small face looked much more fragile with this injury. Thin veins could be seen under her jade-colored skin. Yin threw the handkerchief into the water basin and reached out to help her up with trembling hands. He pulled her into his arms and hugged her tightly. His breathing was shallow as he lowered his head and leaned against her neck. If Arbor was awake, he would definitely be able to feel the slight trembling of her body, as well as the unhurried tears that slid to the bottom of her collarbone. The venerable peach blossom immortal looked in through the window. He reached out to stop Mu Xingqian, who was about to enter, and said softly, "Let them stay for a while. Yin's heart is aching, and she's blaming herself. Give him time to slowly recover. No matter what others say, it's useless." Mu Xingqian glanced at them worriedly and nodded with a sigh. Yin continued to take care of Qiao until it was late into the night and all was quiet. He stayed by her side, changing a clean and moist handkerchief to cover her forehead from time to time. He held her small hand tightly, listened to her murmur lotus, and answered her Jojo anytime, anywhere. However, at this time, Arbor was already in a daze. His entire body felt heavy, as if he was drifting around on a small boat with nowhere to call home. She didn't know where she was, but she knew where her heart was going. Yin, where are you?" She screamed anxiously in her heart. She heard a slow and low voice, as if it came from the faraway sky, saying intermittently, "Jojo, don't be afraid. I'm always by your side. Always, always." She seemed to feel his warm lips on her hand, warm and sweet. Chapter 4381. But her body seemed to be grabbed by a strange force, and she had no choice but to follow the force of the fall. She kept falling, and falling it was as if she had sunk into a boundless dream. Sinking, sinking, sinking endlessly. Wouldn't it have been better if you had boarded the ship? Why did you come back? Why did you come back? What right does a good-for-nothing like you who can't even take care of herself, have to stay by a young master's side? Ridiculous. The woman questioned, and the sound of a whip pierced through the air, landing heavily on a frail body. Arbor stood in the corridor, as if he was looking at someone else's remaining life. His eyes flickered, and he looked on expressionlessly. He lowered his head to look at his transparent hands, which had turned into a wisp of soul, as if floating into an endless abyss of memories. Ah, so my previous life seemed to be a bit more miserable than what I remembered. Bang! The door of the room was suddenly kicked open. The second young master didn't have time to tie up his hair, and his black hair was messy as he broke through the door. Looking at the situation, he must have hurriedly put on his clothes after receiving the news and quickly rushed to this room to save someone. Sure, Yongqian, who told you to hit her? A ruthless slap landed heavily on second Miss Shi's cheek. It immediately caused her white and tender skin to turn red. He took a few steps back from the slap and almost hit the cabinet door behind him. Qin Xian, you actually hit me for this little pet? So what if I hit you? I'm still waiting to be killed. In his rage, the second young master didn't have time to think and reached out to summon a long sword with white light lingering around it from his conscience. Second young master, second young master. Several students immediately rushed forward, stopping him and cupping their hands. Second young master, you can't. Second Miss Shi's father sought refuge with our Qin estate. How can we kill his daughter? Will it disappoint everyone? Get out of the way. Qin Xian angrily pushed aside the students and quickly stepped forward. He didn't care about the blood and dirt and reached out to pick up the dying woman on the ground. Xiao Qiao, Xiao Qiao. The woman who was picked up by him stared at him with lifeless eyes. Her body trembled slightly, and a large amount of blood gushed out from her mouth. It was obvious that her internal organs were injured, and she was severely whipped. Xiao Qiao, don't be afraid. You will get better. You will definitely get better. Qin Xian's voice trembled. She kicked the disciple beside her, almost hysterical. What are you standing there for? Why aren't you calling Ouyangsu over? With a wave of his hand, Omega Kitoku took out a few pills from his inner world and stuffed them all into the woman's mouth. Qin, scram! Omega Kitoku mercilessly kicked away Shi Yongqian, who was walking towards him, and walked out with her in his arms. Arbor watched them from the porch, then turned and followed the anxious second son back to his room. Xiao Qiao. Qin Xian placed the dying woman on the bed and gently held her hand. She said softly, if you want to cry, just cry. Don't hold it in. Arbor's soul floated forward and obediently sat on the small stool beside the bed. His clear and cold eyes reflected the pale and helpless face of the woman on the bed. Even though she was severely injured, she still didn't make a sound. She didn't even blink. Young master, alchemist Ouyangsu is here. Don't talk nonsense. Coming quickly. Arbor turned his head and saw a man in simple but elegant white robes, with long hair tied into a crown, hurriedly enter the room with a medicine chest. Chapter 4382. Following behind him was a black-clothed man with tied hair. He had a brilliant smile and handsome features that she found somewhat familiar. Arbor sat on the small stool and involuntarily glanced at that person a few more times. Ouyangsu, Duguling, greetings to young sir. The two of them cupped their hands in greeting with graceful bearing, truly a pair of fine young masters in this chaotic world. Arbor suddenly had a flash of inspiration and instantly recalled who this Duguling was. Sir Jojo had once been intercepted by young Sir Omega Kitoku and his entourage beside Duchun River. Among them was the second young master's disciple called Ling. He disguised himself as a woman and tricked Jojo, but his identity was subsequently exposed by Duanyu. So it was him. Arbor couldn't help but be a bit dazed. It turned out that she had met so many people at this time in her previous life. Young Sir Omega Kitoku did his best to suppress the raging fury in his heart and bellowed at Ouyangsu, who was behind him, "Stop blabbering and come take a look." Ouyangsu sat down by the bed, and Arbor's soul could only avoid him. "Miss Qiao, let me take your pulse." Su said softly as he glanced at her. As usual, he saw her unperturbed and serene gaze. Those pitch-black eyes were filled with mockery without the slightest desire to live. A moment later, Su stood up and gracefully bowed to the second young master. "Young sir, let's talk outside. Her condition is very bad," Su whispered to young Sir Omega Kitoku in the corridor. He involuntarily cast a glance inside the window and sighed softly. Miss Chao's heart is set on death and has no desire to live. After being struck by the purple firmament lightning dragon previously, 2 of her ribs were broken and haven't healed yet. Now that second Miss Sure's heavy whip has worsened her injuries, this subordinate, don't waste your breath. The second young master suppressed roar interrupted Su. "You must save her, you must. I don't care what method you use, I want her alive. Young sir, this subordinate will certainly do his best. However, her depression is not beneficial to her injuries. It's best if she can release it, hey?" Arbor frowned and looked coldly at Dugu Ling, who always liked to pretend to be a transvestite. Dugu Ling had stolen her aunt and was talking to her previous life. "You're so young. Do you really want to die? A person must have the will to live in order to have hope in the future." Dugu Ling looked at her with a smile. "You're still so young. Why do you always want to seek death? Think about it. It's so good to be alive. You can drink wine, eat meat, and have endless spring flowers. It's enough for you to appreciate. Oh, of course, the world today can't see thriving greenery, but there has to be some hope. Who knows, we might see in the future." Dugu Ling, Omega Kitoku entered the room and said in a deep voice, Okay. I'll go. Dugu Ling felt a chill run down his spine. He quickly got up and ran out. Second Qin unhurriedly and lightly walked to the bedside with a head of black hair that hung down to his waist. She reached out and placed a very old doll on her chest. She wanted to touch her hair, but her fingers curled up and stopped. "Last time it was my fault. I lied to you and said that I tore it apart, causing you to be heartbroken and have nightmares. I know I didn't treat you well in the past, but in the future, I'll change, okay? People can't always look back on the past. They have to look forward." Omega Kitoku stood by the bed and looked down at her. "Can you trust me this time?" Chapter 4383. Arbor's eyes moved, and her gaze landed on the old doll. This was the doll that her mother had given her in her past life, and she had secretly given it to Xiao Lin. She remembered that when Xiao Lin died in her past life, she was still holding onto this doll. After that, when she was collecting her sister's body, she had kept this doll by her side. Now that she suddenly saw this doll, Arbor couldn't help but get closer to it, wanted to take a closer look. Was this real? Her transparent fingers passed through the doll's head, but she didn't grab anything. After all, she was just a spirit. How could she grab anything? Arbor lowered her head and saw that she was silently crying on the bed. She didn't make a single sound, but she could see the tears rolling down her cheeks. This feeling was really strange. It was as if she was watching someone else's tragic life. She wanted to reach out and hug the person who was crying silently. She wanted to pat her head and comfort her so that she wouldn't cry anymore. "So, I was actually this depressed when I cried in my past life." She didn't even make a single sound, as if she would alarm someone if she made a sound. She just laid there and cried silently. She looked at the gauze above her head with a cold expression. Arbor didn't feel good about it. "So, I cried a lot in my past life." As she thought about it, her gaze landed on the bed. She looked at her past life and let out a long sigh. Suddenly, her gaze froze as it landed on the stomach of her past life. He could clearly see a ball of something emitting a faint white light. "Yes, it's the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl in my body." Arbor pondered for a moment and thought to herself, did I have the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl in my body in my past life? That's right. Based on what Long Qian and the others said, the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl was given to her by her mother. That meant that she had this pearl in her past life. But why didn't she know anything about this pearl in her current life? Did she purposely seal it away, or did she not want to remember anything? If she had a physical body Arbor would definitely break out in cold sweat, because she realized that she seemed to have peeped into some profound mysteries buried deep in her heart. She seemed to know something. As far as his eyes could see, the 10,000-year mermaid pearl was emitting a gentle light that kept swaying in his previous life's body. When Omega Kitoku entered, the light slowly subsided. The soul that was wandering in Arbor had been wandering in front of his previous life for the past few days like a spirit behind his back. That second young master came to see her almost every day. This made Arbor feel very strange. Did she really lose a lot of her memories after she self-destructed? At least, she had never remembered this part before. It had almost become a habit for the second young master to visit her every day. It was as if he had changed into a different person. Suddenly, he was very nice to her. However, in her previous life, she was still the same. Usually, she would only listen to him quietly and never interact with anyone. Ouyang-su would come to check her pulse every afternoon. In the afternoon, Omega Kitoku would push her out to bask in the sun and get some fresh air. The whip wounds on her body were slowly getting better. One day, Arbor saw her fingers moving on the side of the bed. She couldn't help but widen her eyes in shock. How could this be? Arbor thought to herself. In the past, her limbs were all broken and she couldn't even move a finger. Why was it happening now? It wasn't an illusion or an illusion. Her fingers really moved. Chapter 4384. This is for you. A pitch-black ring was rudely tossed onto her head. A 15 to 16-year-old youth in black poked his head out of the window and snorted. He shouted at the person who was half lying on the bed in a daze. I whipped you before, so master whipped me 10 times. We're even now. That youth retracted his head from under the window and didn't wait for her reaction for a long time. So he suddenly poked his head back. Seeing that she was half lying there without moving, he simply flipped over and jumped in through the window. Why aren't you saying anything? He stomped to the bedside and glanced at her irritably, nagging, Actually, it's all your fault. If you didn't suddenly bite Master's finger like you wanted nothing more than to bite it off, why would I have smacked you like that? Hey, you're not a mute. Why aren't you saying anything? The youth couldn't help but feel exasperated when he saw that the other party didn't react at all after talking for a long time. The little stoic was still sitting on the small stool beside the bed, sizing up the youth in front of her. Could this be the sacred beast, purple firmament, lightning dragon's transformation? Arbor pondered for a moment and felt that he should have guessed the truth. Was there such a scene in the past? Why did this purple firmament lightning dragon look so dumb? It could be paired with Seventh Yin, that little rascal. They were both Sundara. Could it be that the attributes of dumb dragons were roughly the same? Seeing that she didn't utter a word for a long time, the youth was so angry that he directly picked up the ring he threw at her. He forcefully pulled her hand over and roughly put the ring on. I'm telling you, this defensive sacred weapon was forged for my scales. It's very strong. In the future, don't mention being smacked once by me. Even if I smack you 100 times, nothing would happen to you. I'll guarantee your safety. Why is your face so stoic? I'm giving you a defensive sacred weapon, so why are you so grief-stricken? You should be smiling, you know. How about smiling? The youth bent down, and the long black hair trailing behind his head swayed lightly as he moved his head back and forth. What are you two doing? The little stoic turned around expressionlessly and saw young Master Omega Kitoku standing at the door with a solemn expression, his cold and severe gaze gazing at the two people inside the room. The youth blinked and looked back at the Omega Kitoku with an uneasy expression. Master, get out. Omega Kitoku glanced at him, and the latter quickly ran out of the door. The young man really didn't know why his master's gaze had suddenly become so cold. What did he do? Arbor could tell that the second young master was not in a good mood. When he walked to the bedside and sat down, Arbor could clearly feel that at this moment he really wanted to shrink back. Her fingers suddenly moved, probably with all the strength she could muster in her life, and finally she lifted 2 of them and touched the back of his hand. Second young Master Chin was instantly stupefied and lowered his head to look at her fingers. Jojo, your hand? He hurriedly stood up and shouted, Quick, get Yang-su here. Young master, Mrs. Condition has really taken a turn for the better. Yang-su also said in pleasant surprise. But it was really strange. He was very familiar with Miss Chiao's condition. The meridians in her limbs had been broken for many years. Even if he wanted to save them, it was impossible for them to improve in the short term without finding those god-rank medicinal herbs. Although he had been using medicine on her, the medicine shouldn't have taken effect so quickly. Chapter 4385. Arbor realized that she was recovering faster and faster in her previous life. She had originally been like a withered weed, but now, under a strange power, her body was inexplicably recovering. Arbor even felt a little scared. It was as if there was something she didn't want to think about, but it was about to be revealed in front of her. What could it be? Arbor clenched her fists nervously. She looked down and saw that her soul seemed to be a little faint. She couldn't shake her hands smoothly. 2 months later, her previous life could finally walk. Looking at her struggling to walk, Arbor's heart was filled with mixed feelings. She looked at her deeply. The soul had no tears. If it wasn't for that, her face would have been wet with tears by now. So, it was so difficult for me to stand up in my previous life. I actually forgot everything about the past. I don't know if it's because I denied my past too much. It's too painful, and I want to forget everything. In a person's life, there were too many things that they wanted to remember and didn't want to remember. Maybe she just remembered a lot of things. Xiaomu followed her outside. She watched as she staggered to and fro with a crutch in her hand, trudging outside step by step with great difficulty. Arbor wanted to reach out and help her. She wanted to help support her previous life, who was miserable and unwilling to accept her fate. Maybe at that time, she only needed one person and one pair of hands to help her. Xiaomu stopped her fluttering steps and gazed at her back. Her previous life used her hands to push the door frame and moved out inch by inch. She stood in front of the door and looked up at the sky. She didn't know what she was looking at, but she didn't move her eyes away for a long time. Jojo, why did you come out by yourself? The second son walked through the door towards her. His footsteps were hurried and fast. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of her. Arbor could clearly feel that the body leaning against the door frame trembled slightly. She still didn't like to come into contact with this person. She suppressed the discomfort in her heart and forced herself to look at him. What's wrong? I want to go somewhere. It was the first time he had heard her voice since he came to Arbor. Her voice was hoarse and dry, as if it had been run over by a car twice. Yes, she remembered now. Her throat seemed to have been poisoned by second mixture. She didn't know if it had recovered after that. The teleportation array flashed, and several people walked out of it. They were stunned when they saw what was in front of them. Low slopes, desolate tombs, and luxuriant weeds spread for 10 miles. A few crows that had lost their feathers were perched on the branches. They were not afraid when they saw people coming. They only cawed as they walked. Arbor floated behind them like a spirit. Looking at the desolate graveyard, he couldn't help but feel his heart palpitate. She seemed to recognize this place. It was dilapidated and desolate, like a boundless sea of bitterness from hell. There wasn't the slightest bit of greenery, only withered grass, broken trees, wild graves, and black crows. It seemed to be the place where she had tidied up Xiao Lin's body. It seemed like he had moved the remains of his mother and brother here, as well. Therefore Arbor stood there in a daze. That feeling of wanting to cry, but not being able to shed tears, was simply too terrible. In her previous life, she moved through the desolate graveyard bit by bit, found a place to return, and sat down. The sky was filled with paper money like snow. Arbor's heart ached. She only heard her murmur in a low voice, "I haven't come here for 3 years." Chapter 4386. To all of you. Arbor saw her pick up her wine cup and take a sip before sprinkling the rest of the wine on the graveyard beneath her feet. The second young master's breathing seemed to have become erratic. He stood nearby and watched for a long time. Ever since she returned from worshipping the graveyard, her previous life seemed to have become even quieter. She was very cooperative with the treatment every day. She ate whatever Ouyang Su told her to eat, and took whatever medicine he told her to take. At night, a faint white light would emit from her abdomen. At this point, Arbor had no choice but to take this shark pearl seriously. It was a fact that she had always been unwilling to think about, and had always been unwilling to admit. It was the shark pearl. It really was this 10,000-year-old shark pearl. At this moment, she should understand why the wounds on her body would often disappear miraculously. It was the effect of the shark pearl. After she entered the water, she was like a fish in water, as if she had become one with the water spirit of heaven and earth. This was also the effect of the shark pearl. She recalled the many inconceivable things that had happened to her in the past. Arbor made a bold conjecture. The shark pearl should have three main effects. First, it could fuse with her body into water. The shark pearl could allow her to breathe freely in water, and it wouldn't be strenuous for her to run and walk. Second, it had astonishing recovery abilities. Thinking back, what was Lady Holy Water's thought when she first came into contact with holy water at the Holy Water sect? This little girl is so fresh. Her body is filled with the moisturizing taste that Lady Holy Water likes the most. What did that mean? Lady Holy Water could sense the abundant water spirit energy in her body the moment she came into contact with her. The shark pearl was born to melt water in all forms and was not inferior to holy water. Hence, the reason why Lady Holy Water targeted her and wanted her to become a host wasn't because of how talented she was, but because of the 10,000-year-old shark pearl in her body. When Lady Holy Water first saw her, she wanted to get close to the shark pearl. However, this 10,000-year-old shark pearl had been sealed in her previous life. It wasn't until she experienced countless tribulations and broke through her body's limits that the seal loosened and slowly started to take effect. However, it was different in this life. In this life, the seal on the shark pearl became unstable when she came into contact with Lady Holy Water at the sect. Holy Water was attracted to the shark pearl. So how could the shark pearl not be attracted to holy water? Hence, the seal on her shark pearl should have already started to loosen back then at Seacon Planet's Jiaozhong base. She was slightly injured when she exploded the Mystic Beast Forest Mystic Realm Core, but the shark pearl healed her on the same day. After that, this inexplicable healing ability remained. In the past, he could not figure it out no matter how much he thought about it. Now that he thought about it from the start to the end, wasn't this the recovery ability of the shark pearl? No wonder the little tree said that even the life force of the wood spirit could not recover so quickly. How powerful was the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl? In her previous life, this 10,000-year mermaid pearl had truly healed her limbs and body at this time, mending her damaged body, allowing her to slowly stand up, walk, and walk outside to look at the sunlight outside. The third effect of the merman's pearl should be to automatically protect the host, expel ghosts, and purify all unclean things. So even though she was able to use the ghost summoning talisman, she had never been able to see any ghostly spirits. No ghostly spirits were able to get close to her. This should be the reason. She still remembered that when she first entered the Divine Prefecture and stepped into the Milky Way, endless saint power surged towards her. At that time, it was the mermaid pearl that protected her from the saint power and activated its automatic defense. And now, she could cultivate on her own even when she was sleeping. She was absorbing the specks of divine power around her without noticing anything. Chapter 4387. It probably had something to do with the 10,000-year-old shark pearl. The 10,000-year-old shark pearl was so powerful that obtaining it was like obtaining a source of power. How could such a sacred item not move one's heart? How could one not be happy with it? Arbor didn't have a physical body at the moment. She was just thinking about it habitually, pacing back and forth in the room. She understood. She finally understood. Fan Xiuhe had been ordered by Mu Qingya to study her inner world because she wanted the shark pearl, right? Mu Qingya, this woman, had indeed hidden her true intentions well. Why did he always make her mistakenly think that it was a love affair or a grudge? Who knew that it was actually for this 10,000-year-old shark pearl? Arbor's soul couldn't help but shudder at this thought. Muchinya really made her hair stand on end. She had arranged so many things to target her and thought of ways to break her wings. She even controlled her like in her previous life and threw her into that dark and shabby underground laboratory. Just to dig out the shark pearl in her body? But she didn't tell Fan Chioha anything. She only let him study her inner world. Shark pearl, 10,000-year-old shark pearl. Muchinya actually wanted this shark pearl in her dreams. Xiao Mu wanted to look up at the sky and laugh heartily, but the abnormally sour and bitter feeling in her heart prevented her from even crying. She thought about how sad her past life was. How could he forget such an important thing? Once he did, he would forget it for a lifetime. She couldn't remember it at all. Muchinya wanted the shark pearl. The Wangchuan dragon family also wanted this shark pearl. They all wanted it. Did she have to give it to them just because they wanted it? What a joke. This 10,000-year-old shark pearl was left to her by her mother, so it was hers. She was stupid in the past and didn't know the reason. Now that she knew, she would take good care of it. She had to go back. Go back immediately. Go back to Jojo's side. Her soul struggled for a while. As if sensing her restlessness, Yin hastily reached out to hold her slightly cold small hand. A pair of warm hands held her small hands firmly in his and cupped them. Jojo, do you feel cold? Jojo hasn't woken up yet? Mu Xingqian walked in and glanced at the bed worriedly. You can't just stay here all the time. Go eat something. Mu Xingqian glanced at Yin and couldn't help but sigh. It had only been 3 days, and this fellow had almost turned himself into something that was neither human nor ghost. Yin ignored her and continued to hold Arbor's hand, muttering, Jojo, Jojo. The venerable peach blossom immortal walked over and extended his finger to release a strand of divine consciousness. He frowned slightly and only withdrew his divine consciousness after a long while. Logically speaking, he should have woken up. At this time, Arbor's divine ruins realm and consciousness had all stabilized. This morning, they could all contact Xiao. Why didn't she wake up? She's in a dream. Sikong Fulling's cold voice sounded from outside the window. Beside her stood the smiling young Master Ding. Miss Sikong. Mu Xingqian was desperate and hurried over to push open the door. Do you have a way to wake Jojo up? Of course. Sikong Fulling picked up her nightmare demonic flute. The ancients used to fight poison with poison. This saying is not false at all. I can enter a dream with a dream and order him to wake up immediately. Will it hurt his divine consciousness? The venerable peach blossom immortal frowned and asked in a low voice. Chapter 4388. Sikong Fulling shook her head decisively. Of course not. The venerable peach blossom immortal and Mu Xingqian both glanced sideways at Yin. This matter still had to be decided by Yin. Should they let Sikong Fulling interfere in Jojo's matter? What were the chances of success of entering a dream with a dream that Sikong Fulling spoke of? No one could be sure if it was really as she said, that Jojo's divine consciousness would not be harmed at all. Sikong Fulling did not force them. She only glanced at Yin and said mildly, You'd better make a decision as soon as possible. In her situation, if she can't withdraw in time, it will harm her divine consciousness instead. In an especially serious situation, she may not be able to come out after entering a dream. The venerable peach blossom immortal glared at her. Sikong Fulling silently shut her mouth and turned to walk out. I'm not exaggerating. It's not impossible for you to do it. Yin's gloomy voice sounded faintly. But I'll enter the dream personally to bring her out. What? Sikong Fulling's expression grew increasingly serious. This is very dangerous. If your divine consciousness leaves your body and enters her dream, there's no way to reverse the situation if anything happens. You have to consider it carefully. Yin stood up and glanced at her coldly. You strongly object to me entering the dream. Do you want to take the opportunity to spy on something? Sikong Fulling's expression darkened as she turned to look at Ding Yun beside her. But Ding Yun said with a smile, Okay, Seekong Fulling could not help snorting and pursing her lips disdainfully. The venerable peach blossom immortal glanced at her. So many evasions. Don't tell me Mo Lien guessed correctly? Seekong Fulling glared at the latter. Mu Xingqian saw that the atmosphere was not good and hurriedly smiled to smooth things over. Miss Seekong, with Mo Lien's help, I believe that you can definitely pull Jojo out of the dream faster. Let's try. Holding a pitch-black nightmare demonic flute, Seekong Fulling coolly swept a glance at the group. Let's get the ugly words out of the way first. Once your highness enters the dream, you must follow my instructions. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to shoulder the responsibility if something were to happen and you or Xiao Mu were to be harmed. She spoke in an enigmatic tone, but Mo Lien didn't pay much attention to her. He merely looked at Xiao Mu on the bed and grasped her hand, nodding absent-mindedly. Okay. Seekong Fulling turned her head and exchanged a glance with Cult Master Ding. A devilish smile appeared on the corners of the latter's lips. He tilted his head slightly and said softly and slowly, "Since we've agreed, then let's go and prepare first." The peony fairy leaned against the door and turned her head to look at the back of the siblings. She raised her eyebrows slightly and asked with a faint smile, "Are they trustworthy?" Little Tai Sui rolled its eyes. "I also don't think it's trustworthy." Mu Xingqian glanced at them and sighed softly. "But what that Miss Seekong said is not completely unreasonable. If you want to enter a dream, then so be it. What do you need to prepare? It really seems like you're stalling for time." Little Tai Sui snorted and waved his little hand slightly. He glanced at the silent Mo Lien. "Hey, what's your plan? Say it. If you don't say it, how are they going to cooperate?" The peony fairy smiled and patted little Tai Sui's shoulder, provoking an angry glare from him. Mo Lien picked up his wife and walked out, saying coolly, "Many thanks. I do need your help." Chapter 4389. Little Tai Sui rolled his eyes at his back. "I'm not used to being so polite all of a sudden." Yuan Shichun couldn't help but laugh. She walked over and grabbed little Tai Sui. "If you're worried, just worry. There's nothing to be ashamed of even if you say it. What's wrong with you? You always like to talk sarcastically." Little Tai Sui's face immediately flushed red. He was so angry that he wanted to struggle free from Yuan Shichun's claws. Who has the leisure to worry about that guy? Let go, let go. What kind of scandal is this for a real man to pull and pull? Yuan Shichun directly glanced at his short figure out of the corner of her eye. "Sorry, I couldn't tell that you were a real man." Little Tai Sui was so angry that he wanted to kick her. "Shut up." Everyone left the court and went to the Fengtai waterside pavilion in front of them. They saw Mo Lien standing there with Arbor in her arms. Cult Master Ding and Seekong Fulling walked down from the balcony and smiled at everyone. "It's about time. Follow me." Everyone followed him into the waterside pavilion. At a glance, they saw that many talisman papers had been used to set up a spirit-guiding talisman array that wasn't particularly complicated. Mo Lien walked over with Arbor in her arms and gently placed it in the center of the talisman array. She then sat down and supported Seekong Fulling's hand. Seekong Fulling flicked the nightmare demonic flute in her hand and said indifferently, "After entering the dream, you must bring it out within 2 hours. Otherwise, all your previous efforts will be wasted. If it's more serious, it will stimulate your divine sense. You have to pay attention to the time." Mo Lien coldly replied, "Let's begin." Without waiting for Seekong Fulling to retort, little Tai Sui, Peony Fairy, Ginkgo Fairy, Thin Tuchuo, and Dao Wuji all sat outside the talisman array. They each guarded a corner and joined forces to set up the array. A light barrier fell on the talisman array. The 5 people entered the state and closed their eyes in silence. Seekong Fulling slightly tightened her grip on the nightmare demonic flute and turned to look at the venerable peach blossom immortal, who was standing leisurely outside the talisman array. Why doesn't venerable immortal lord join their defensive array? Infuriating, this was clearly not trusting her, Seekong Fulling. The reason why the 5 of them had joined hands to set up the defensive array was to prevent her from secretly causing trouble for Prince Mo. The venerable peach blossom immortal looked at her innocently. He blinked and smiled. One must always be wary of others. Don't you think so, Miss Seacombe? Gritting her teeth, Seacombe Fulling turned back to glance at Cult Master Ding. If her brother hadn't dragged her here to save Arbor, she wouldn't have gotten involved in this mess. She wouldn't have begged to stay here and be doubted by others. I'm sorry. Mu Xingqian hastily stepped forward to appease Seacombe Fulling, just like when he was putting out the fire. Miss Seacombe, this matter is of great importance. It's understandable for them to be a little more careful. Seacombe Fulling coldly glanced at Mu Xingqian. Ding Yin, who was by the side, did not take it to heart as he smiled. Fu Ling, no need to mind. You will use your actions to prove, slap, the truth in the face. Let venerable immortal lord know that they are really thinking too much. Seacombe Fulling snorted and nodded. She reached out to pick up the nightmare demonic flute. Prince Imo, there may be miasma disturbance in the dream. You must not forcibly break it, so as to avoid harming Arbor's soul. After saying this, Seacombe Fulling could not be bothered to say anything else. A sinister tune immediately sounded. Like a cold stream from a cold spring, it seeped into everyone's hearts inch by inch. It was so cold that they couldn't help shivering and cowering slightly. Chapter 4390. Arbor struggled bitterly for 2 days, but she still couldn't break out of this soul state. She was a little worried. What was this situation? If she was in a dream, she was actually like a bystander floating around behind her previous life. If she wasn't in a dream, everything in front of her was too realistic. The sun rose and set. Autumn left and winter came. Counting the days, she seemed to have already been with her previous life for 4 months. In these 4 months, she had once again witnessed how difficult it had been for her in her previous life. She watched as she walked on the ground and continuously exercised. She stumbled, fell, stood up, and fell again. Until now, she could already walk stably. The 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl in her previous life didn't seem to have such excellent recovery ability as it did in this life. Arbor thought to herself, it's probably because the mermaid pearl seal was only torn open a little in her previous life, so not much power flowed out. Unlike her current life, when a mermaid pearl fought the black dragon at the bottom of the River of Forgetfulness, the seal was completely broken. Hey, stoic face, look here and here. Where are your eyes looking? A young man's clear voice suddenly sounded at the entrance of the courtyard. Arbor turned around and saw the black-clothed young man transform from the stupid dragon, standing in front of the pavilion under a pear tree that hadn't bloomed for a long time. He looked over with a smile. The previous life looked at him expressionlessly. Her long hair fluttered slightly in the cold wind. She was dressed in a plain snow-white robe, and her eyes were calm. Arbor was a little dazed for a moment. Why does this feeling of looking into a mirror feel so strange? Looking at her is like looking at my own stoic face. Arbor subconsciously reached out to touch his small face. So, I've been stoic for 2 lifetimes. Is this your sword? He ran over and handed her a purple-black longsword that looked a little old. Although her previous life's limbs had recovered quite well, she obviously couldn't pick up such a heavy sword. So Qiao Mu then saw that sword fall from her arms to the ground with a bang, smashing into the muddy ground. The purple firmament thunder dragon curled his lips and bent down to pick up the sword. He patted the dirt off the sword and whispered, "Why is a girl like you carrying such a heavy sword?" Arbor floated in front of them and reached out to touch his sword. There was a hint of nostalgia in his eyes. She had once dug out this sword from a pile of corpses. In her previous life, it had always been by her side, cutting down countless zombies. Although in the end, it had become so blunt that it could not cut anything, it was still a thought in her mind. Everything had changed too much in this life. Even if she tried her best to find it, she was afraid that she would not be able to find it. Therefore, she never thought of looking for it in the first place. There were some things that were enough to be remembered in one's heart. There was no need to seek perfection in everything. Here, the youth pushed the sword into her arms, such a heavy sword. In the future, Let the armament master refine it for you. No need. Classmate Purple Firmament Thunder Dragon blinked and suddenly jumped up. Are you talking to me? Heh, did the heavens open their eyes today? One had to know that his master had asked him to protect this stoic face. He usually came to this courtyard for a stroll when he had nothing to do. He didn't know how many times he had talked to her, but she never responded. Many times, the youth was about to shut himself off. When a mute speaks, an iron tree blossoms. Chapter 43:91. Qian Sheng glanced at him. No, Purple Firmament Thunder Dragon couldn't keep up with her thoughts and scratched his head dumbly. No what? But Qian Sheng ignored him and laboriously hugged her sword as she turned around. Her arms still felt weak, and the heavy sword slid to the ground once again. Purple Firmament Thunder Dragon bent down to pick it up and vigorously patted the dirt and dust off it. He had a flash of inspiration as he exclaimed, I got it. You're saying there's no flower, right? Arbor couldn't help but roll her eyes. When she turned around, she saw two young sirs in snow-white robes strolling over from one end of the corridor. Their robes were light and broad, their sleeves fluttering. Their features were picturesque, as if in a dream. It was actually eldest young Master Qin, and that fifth young Master Qin, whom she had met a few times. Arbor naturally felt an indescribable shock. Why doesn't she remember anything? From the looks of it, she really did know quite a few people from the Qin estate in the past. She vaguely remembered how she felt when she first saw Omega Kitoku at the Qin estate's entrance as a servant girl. Some were stunned, some were shocked, and some were confused. She recognized this nightmarish person, and she also recognized his pair of cold and beautiful eyes. But she couldn't remember his name. Did she really not remember? Or was she deliberately trying not to remember? It was completely unknown now. As Qiao Mu stood stiffly in that courtyard, she could clearly hear eldest young Sir Qin's low, teasing chuckle. Who is that? Eldest young master. Fifth young master. This is second young master's Miss Qiao. The steward's voice lowered. Second younger brother seems to be slacking off recently. Eldest brother. I think that girl is quite nice. She's much better than that noisy second young Miss Sure. Eldest young Master Qin couldn't help but burst into laughter. In your opinion, it's better not to make a fuss than to make a fuss. Arbor stood there in a daze for a while. Her memories were in a mess, and she couldn't connect them. When had she ever seen so many people? Even worse, since she had already stood up in her previous life, why did it feel like all her limbs were broken and she had never crawled back up in her subsequent memories? Was she still missing an important part of her past? What was it? What was it? Arbor's soul floated in the air, reaching out to hit his own head. However, she heard the Omega Kitoku's calm voice coming from the entrance of the courtyard. Jojo, I brought the person you wanted to see. Arbor subconsciously looked over, and his eyes couldn't help but sway slightly. She saw a skinny young man in green standing 5 steps away from the second young master, staring at her in a daze. Of course, the young man wasn't looking at her. His gaze went past her and looked at his previous life standing on the stairs. Arbor turned around and looked at her. The former life's eyes reddened, and she suddenly smiled at that person. In an instant, it was like a blooming flower. That smile also made Arbor feel a little surprised. I actually look this good when I smile. I'm not being narcissistic. Although this face is pale and without any makeup, it is still beautiful when she smiles. So this is where I first met Duanmu Qing. I don't seem to remember anything while Arbor was in a daze. She suddenly felt a slight ripple in the air in front of her. A pair of hands abruptly reached out from the torn void and hugged her tightly. Who is it? Arbor heard the 2 young masters of the Qin estate shout angrily. 2 gusts of wind followed. Chapter 43:92. However, she was immediately pulled into the spatial fissure. She couldn't help but pat her chest as she mused. Eldest Qin and Omega Kitoku. These 2 people are quite sharp. She was merely a soul. When she was pulled out of the dream, there was a faint spatial fluctuation, and the 2 of them immediately detected a clue. It truly wasn't easy. That pair of hands that tore open the void just now was undoubtedly her dear husband's. However, Arbor couldn't help but frown when she saw that she was in a boundless white fog. What was going on? Didn't hubby pull her out of that dream? Why was hubby gone now, and she was the only one left? Why couldn't she even see a ghost in this white fog? Hubby, quickly come out. The little stoic called out in displeasure with a stoic face. She ran back and forth in the white fog for who knew how long, but she still didn't see his figure. What was going on? Could it be that this white fog was also her dream? She actually hadn't escaped from the dream yet? From afar, she seemed to see a figure continuously waving at her. Arbor strained her eyes to look over and saw a woman walking over from the rolling fog. She held a flute in her hand, and a demonic tune rose in spirals. This flute tune sounded familiar, as if she had heard it somewhere before. Arbor was slightly alarmed, and she looked down at her soul. This drifting appearance truly made people feel very helpless. The rolling white fog in front of her didn't seem to disperse, and the flute tune was getting closer and closer. When Arbor saw the figure of the person in front of her clearly, she couldn't help but be shocked. It was Seekong Fulling? Did Seekong Fulling enter her dream? Hubby clearly grabbed her just now, but the two of them separated in the blink of an eye. Could it be this Seekong Fulling's doing? Quickly come over. Seekong Fulling was also somewhat exhausted at this time. Arbor's dream simply made her want to vomit blood. Although she had mentally prepared herself that a crafty little girl like her would definitely be engulfed in white fog in her dream, she reckoned that she wouldn't be able to see anything useful. However, she still didn't expect that this girl would be so deranged. How is this white fog? It was simply level 18 fog, all right? As soon as she entered the Arbor dream, she almost lost her sense of direction. She had no idea where to go. All right, I won't be able to find any useful information anyway. It was better to get this swindler out of here as soon as possible. As Seekong Fulling thought this, her heart couldn't help but feel stifled when she saw the young lady's expressionless face and suspicious gaze. She really regretted entering the dream to see this guy. Wouldn't it be better to have so much free time to eat melon seeds and drink tea? Why did he have to come and help Prince Imo enter his dreams? Why did his body suddenly fly up? By the time Seekong Fulling realized it, she had already flown out and landed heavily in the thick fog. Should he thank this stoic face for making the surrounding fog so dense? She fell into the thick fog, but she was not injured. When she stood up with a stupefied look on her face, she saw that Mo Lien had already rushed to Arbor's side and pulled her into his embrace. Seekong Fulling couldn't help but secretly grind her teeth. She had deliberately used the sound of the flute to separate the two of them. However, she didn't expect that this guy, Prince Imo, would actually be able to return so quickly. Hubby, the little stoic felt extremely aggrieved when she saw him. Why did you take so long to come? She had been on tenterhooks in her dream for 4 months and couldn't even leave. It was truly worrying. Emolian hastily hugged his wife, his heart aching terribly. Jojo, it's my fault I came late. Punish me, punish me, punish you for kissing me. Chapter 4393. Seekong Fulling's jaw was about to drop. Why did this Prince Imo seem to be even more stinky and shameless than when he was on Seekong Planet? Who are you letting down by publicly throwing dog food in front of her like this? Wait a minute. Seekong Fulling suddenly thought of something and sized the two up with an inexplicably strange gaze. You guys, how is this possible? Hugging each other? Strictly speaking, this was Arbor's dream. How could Prince Imo, as an external divine sense body, be hugging Arbor's soul body? She had to calm down. She breathed in, and exhaled again to calm her mind. Seekong Fulling glared at them. Seeing the two of them hugging each other intimately, she couldn't help but get angry. Still not leaving? Look at this stoic face. He created so much fog here, but we don't even know where the exit is now. Mo Yin hugged his wife and turned to glare at Seekong Fulling. As expected, you're up to no good. He had clearly hugged Jojo just now, but the scene before his eyes had changed in an instant. The two of them had probably been disturbed by Seekong Fulling's flute music, which was why they had inexplicably separated. Seekong Fulling naturally wouldn't admit it. She said angrily with a cold face, "Isn't that because this stoic face is so guarded? Who else could set up fog in a dream so dense that we can't even see the path clearly?" As she spoke, she felt something bump into her back. Seekong Fulling was greatly alarmed. She gripped the nightmare demonic flute tightly and swiftly turned around. "Who is it? This stoic face wanted to trick her again, right?" Sorry, Miss Seekong. Did I accidentally hurt you?" Mu Xingqian's voice drifted into her ears through the thick fog. Seekong Fulling gritted her teeth in anger and thought. This stoic face, this swindler, made the place she was standing in especially dense fog. He actually only realized now that Mu Xingqian was behind her. "Why are you here? I saw that a lot of time had passed, but you and Mo Lien still hadn't returned. In my impatience, I followed you into the formation." Seekong Fulling took 2 deep breaths and couldn't help but twitch her mouth when she turned around. Mu Xingqian was clearly standing behind her, but she couldn't even see his shadow through the layers of fog. Seekong Fulling could only continue to play her flute to explore the path, occasionally speaking to Mu Xingqian expressionlessly. "Don't blame me for not reminding you. Your sister is such a troublemaker. She messed up her dream. If you don't obediently follow my flute music, you won't be able to leave and will be locked in your sister's dream forever." Mu Xingqian hurriedly said, "Miss Seekong, don't worry. I've been following behind you. Where did my sister and brother-in-law go?" "How would I know?" Seekong Fulling unhappily roared at him. If she knew, why would she still be here talking to him like a poor mushroom? While he was talking to Mu Xingqian, Arbor and Mo Lien both disappeared. Seekong Fulling had an impulse to run over right now, grab that stoic face, and kick her to death with punches and kicks. I really have nothing better to do than to get involved in such muddy water. Hurry and leave. Seekong Fulling's flute music paused for a moment before she discovered that the thick fog all around them was sweeping over. Thus, she didn't dare to stop playing and continued to use the nightmare demonic flute to search for a way out. She could only secretly curse Arbor in her heart for causing trouble. What do you think she's after? She's just an onlooker. Isn't it good to just watch the show? Chapter 4394. It was her fault for not being rewarded for her kindness. Yet, she had to come here and cause such a scene. Miss Seekong, be careful. A strong force suddenly pushed her to the side from behind. At the same time, a black dragon's claw suddenly reached out from the rolling fog and flattened the hillside in front of her in an instant. Fuck, what's going on? Seekong Fulling looked at the scene in front of her with trepidation. Just a moment ago, the scenery in front of her rapidly changed. Without the dense fog, a clear sky instantly appeared before her eyes. At this time, she and Mu Xingqian were standing on a barren hillside, and the black dragon that was flying in the air and extending its claw toward her, its entire body exuded a terrifying holy beast coercion. With her current realm, let alone a claw from a holy beast, she was afraid that a single toe from it would be enough to pulverize her. It's a black dragon. Mu Xingqian couldn't help but be alarmed. That ancient black dragon. Seekong Fulling clutched the nightmare demonic flute tightly and shouted as she ran in a panic, "Mu Xingqian, you recognize this guy. Jojo was previously injured by this black dragon at the bottom of the River of Forgetfulness and then fell into a coma." Mu Xingqian said briefly and then asked with a puzzled expression, "But why is it here? Why are you saying so much? It's chasing after us." Seekong Fulling was so anxious that she stomped her feet and roared. She turned around and hurriedly ran forward while playing the flute. Mu Xingqian was naturally not stupid. Looking at this black dragon's ferocious appearance, it didn't seem to be here for a heart-to-heart talk in Jojo's dream. This black dragon inexplicably appeared and suddenly swept toward them. The two of them rolled and crawled down the hillside and rushed into the forest in front of them without a care. The more they ran, the more familiar it seemed. Fuck, this looks a bit like the Phoenix Mulin. Seekong Fulling roared against the wind. It is the Phoenix Mulin. Miss Seekong, quickly get out of the way. Mu Xingqian pushed Seekong Fulling away. The black dragon's huge tail swept across a circle of trees in a split second, sweeping up the towering trees behind them and flinging them away. The two of them were running at full speed. From time to time, the dragon would poke its ferocious head out from between the gaps of the trees, extending its claws and slapping the two of them on the back. Oh my God, what kind of pervert did I provoke? Seacone Fulling's face scrunched up, scrunched up again, and then scrunched up again. She looked up to the sky and howled in grief and indignation. I know. Your sister is a freak. She materialized the dreamscape. What? You still don't understand? Seacone Fulling angrily clenched her fists as she ran through the forest. The stoic face really is a pervert. She views me, who invaded her dream, as an enemy. Materialization of the dreamscape, summoning corporeal, ferocious beasts. She wants to keep me here. How is that possible? Sister won't hurt us. Why not? What do you think she won't do in her dreams? Also, not us. It's me. Mu Xingqian silently lowered his eyes. I think she did it unintentionally. Seacone Fulling madly charged forward. Arbor, get out here. Damn stoic face, get out here. If the stoic face was in front of her right now, she would definitely pounce on her and bite her to death. Regardless of whether it was intentional or not, the fact that this damn pervert could do such a thing proved that she wasn't human at all. What kind of person could be so strange and come up with so many deceptive tricks in their dreams? It's her, it's only her. Chapter 4395. Mu Xingqian ran wildly with Seacone Fulling and hurriedly placated her. Miss Seacone, don't panic. I'll call younger sister and have her stop first. Seacone Fulling looked up at the sky in grief and indignation, wanting to cry but having no tears. She rolled and crawled to avoid several trees that pounced on her. Arbor, get out here. Seacone Fulling roared angrily, startling countless birds in the forest. Haha, this stoic face really did create a complete forest of phoenix trees in his dream. Miss Seacone, don't panic. Let's head forward. There's a cave up ahead. Let's go in and take shelter. Arbor pulled Emolien's hand and suddenly appeared at the top of a tree. Why did Big Brother also come in? Jojo, don't let your imagination run wild. Put away that black dragon. Emolien was speechless. Big Brother can't handle it. What kind of joke was this? He and Ma Yingchun weren't a match for that mature sacred beast, even if they worked together, let alone a mere deity realm Mu Xingqian. Okay, Arbor nodded. With a thought, that black dragon that was chasing after Seacone Fulling and was about to bite off half her head with a crunch. Amidst Seacone Fulling's wailing and howling, she abruptly transformed into a black whirlwind that hurriedly swept into the sky and abruptly disappeared without a trace. Seacone Fulling fell to the ground with trembling legs, her calves twitching uncontrollably. Her eyes contained indescribable horror as she looked at Arbor and Emolien, who floated to the ground. You. Seacone Fulling pointed at Arbor with a trembling finger. She was stifled in her heart and couldn't take a deep breath for a long time. Arbor looked at her expressionlessly. You entered my dream with ulterior motives and wanted to spy on my past. You wanted to trick me. Who wants to trick you? Who can trick you? Seacone Fulling trembled with anger and had the misconception that she didn't want to talk to this stoic face anymore. Arbor extended 2 fingers and gestured with his eyes. I saw it. Startled, Seacone Fulling's small face contorted slightly. You entered my dream and used the flute to find the way. You wanted to find me before Emolien did. You deliberately used the flute to lead him to another fork in the road. If not for the fact that Jojo's lotus had the ability to tear through the void, he would probably have to go around in circles several times in this dream realm and might not be able to find her before Seacone Fulling. Emolien gave Seacone Fulling an icy look. In the end, Seacone Fulling fell silent. She had never intended for Emolien to get involved. Unfortunately, he insisted on entering the dream and personally bringing Arbor out, which really made her feel very inconvenient. I sincerely wish to enter a dream and take you away from this place. Seacone Fulling suddenly said. Arbor nodded calmly. I know. Otherwise, how do you think you've survived until now? Seacone Fulling looked at her cold and bright eyes and suddenly shuddered a little. Seacone Fulling seemed to have read some kind of meaning from her eyes. Seacone Fulling only felt her back drenched in cold sweat. She inexplicably felt her whole body go limp, as if she couldn't muster up any strength from this fright. Seacone Fulling's cold sweat trickled down. Desuppress? You enter my dream. Do you still think you can do anything? Arbor shot her an indifferent glance. Mu Xingqian hurriedly pleaded for leniency for Seacone Fulling. Younger sister, Miss Seacone probably misunderstood because she was curious. Chapter 4396. At this time, Seacone Fulling was naturally certain that Arbor was completely unaffected by the nightmare demonic flute's control. Even in a dream, Arbor could counter her with just a wisp of his soul. Materialization of dreams and suppression of dreams. Arbor seemed to be innately adept at all of this. He used it effortlessly and effortlessly. Younger sister, Miss Seacone probably didn't intentionally pry into your dream. Mu Xingqian did his best to build a bridge to put out the fire and diligently smoothed things over. For the first time, Seacone Fulling realized that this handsome man in front of her was actually quite pleasing to the eye. At the very least, this person's words were definitely more reliable and nice-sounding than his younger sister Arbor's. Arbor glanced at his eldest brother before sweeping a glance at Seacone Fulling, who was standing stiffly on the side. Seacone Fulling immediately stammered, stoic face, I entered your dream to save you. Arbor retracted his gaze and clenched his small fists. Clear the way with the flute and lead us out. Seacone Fulling understood his meaning from observing his movements. You have such high control over your dream. Why can't you get out? Arbor expressionlessly looked at her and said, Of course I can get out. But since you're here, let me see your skills. Huh. Seacone Fulling secretly rolled her eyes fiercely. Don't think that I can believe you just because you're expressionless and speak as if it's true. Your prideful nature already allows you to see everything clearly. It's really strange. This little stoic is such a formidable figure, yet she was actually trapped in a dream and couldn't get out? The thick miasma before her eyes wasn't the most realistic dream at the bottom of her heart. Then what kind of dream did the little stoic experience this time? What exactly was the secret hidden in the depths of her heart? Seacone Fulling suddenly sensed a severe gaze land on her. When she looked up and met Prince Mo's glinting phoenix eyes, her heart involuntarily shivered. You'd best stay out of things that you don't need to care about. Seacone Fulling pursed her lips. Isn't this just because I'm curious? Mo Yin scoffed coldly, but she was very disapproving in her heart. Would Seacone Fulling be curious? Of course she wouldn't. She had the nightmare magic flute, and had probably entered many people's dreams in the past. How could she be curious about Jojo's dream? It must have been the Hierophant who had instigated her to go into Jojo's dream and find out what it was so that he could take advantage of it. Mo Yin felt that she must have found out the truth. She became even more wary of Ding Yun. It was extremely abnormal for this fellow to appear here. He must have a close relationship with the disgusting Wang Chuan dragon clan. At the center of the mystical guiding glyph formation, there were ripples of water-like vibrations. Little Tai Sui, Dao Wuji, and the others who were sitting in a circle around the rune formation all opened their eyes slightly. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal stood outside the talisman array. His guarded expression relaxed a little as he slowly turned to look into the talisman array. Mo Yin, Mu Xingqian, and Seacone Fulling opened their eyes one after another. In the end, Arbor suddenly opened his eyes and jumped up from the ground. He raised his hand and tugged at his husband's sleeve. Let's go. Mo Yin also immediately stood up. She pulled Arbor's small hand and said to the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and the others, Let's return to Cloud Court first. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal followed them without a second word, leaving the Ding siblings behind. Seacone Fulling furtively looked up at Ding Yun and stammered, Brother, we didn't find anything. Chapter 4397. Not only did she return empty-handed, but she also cut an especially sorry figure. Seacombe Fulling looked down at her hair that was as messy as a chicken's nest and her clothes that were riddled with holes. She involuntarily wanted to cry, but had no tears. Previously, she was almost slapped to death by Black Dragon's claws several times as he played with her like a human-shaped doll. Now that the crisis was averted and she returned to her senses, Seacombe Fulling discovered that there was practically not a single piece of undamaged cloth on her body. How could she be in such a miserable state? Seacombe Fulling couldn't help but want to scratch her head hysterically. The little stoic was too infuriating to look at. Infuriating. Dingan didn't say much. He merely consoled her after seeing her sorry figure and sent her back to her room to rest. Meanwhile, he slowly strolled toward Cloud Park while inwardly plotting who he should find to inquire about the little stoic's current situation. Just as he stepped out of the waterside pavilion's perimeter, he saw a beam of divine light shoot up into the sky from a courtyard in the northwest corner and hover in the sky for a long time without dispersing. Fuck, that's the advancement light. Ding Yin quickened his steps and rushed toward the small courtyard. He inwardly pondered. Could it be that the little stoic advanced? At the same time, the alarmed Dragon Clan members also rushed toward Cloud Park under Long Qian's lead. The experts of a Dragon Clan from all directions rushed towards the Cloud Mansion. Everyone gathered at the entrance of the Cloud Mansion. Who's advancing at the bottom of the river of forgetfulness? Such a dazzling advancement light. Could it be that someone is advancing to the divine realm here and is about to enter the five spirits cycle of reincarnation? That won't do. Are they trying to kill all of us by drawing the heavenly law's five spirits to the bottom of the sea? The bottom of the river of forgetfulness can't withstand the bombardment of the heavenly law's chaotic reincarnation of the five spirits. Everyone quiet down, quiet down. Long Qian took a deep breath and blocked the entrance to the courtyard as he shouted at everyone. Long Qian frowned and glanced at his grandson before asking gravely, Long Qian, do you know who's advancing here? Long Shangyun couldn't resist pursing her lips and inwardly thought, if grandmother knew that little evildoer's abilities, she probably wouldn't ask this question. Since the little evildoer's body carry the 10,000-year-old shark pearl, is there still a need to ask this question now that the pearl break out of the seal? Who is advancing here? Aside from the demonic genius who broke the seal on the Jiao pearl, Xiao Chun could not think of a second person. Long Qian's face darkened, and she was about to speak. The door was suddenly pulled open from the inside. Mo Lien raised her phoenix eyes slightly, her gaze indifferent. She stood at the door and glanced at the people outside. What's the matter? Long Qian knew that she had already offended her grandson-in-law, so she thought about her tone before asking, Who is advancing here? Previously, there was already someone in your team who triggered the heavenly lightning and heavenly fire due to the five spirits' reincarnation. Can you ask that expert to move to the island outside? Before Mo Lien could reply with a sneer, a faint laugh came from outside the crowd. Clan leader Long, aren't you making things difficult for him? Young Master Ding chuckled as he walked to the front of the crowd and glanced at Long Qian, whose face had turned green. How can you interrupt him at such a critical juncture? If something goes wrong, you won't be able to take responsibility. Long Qian's face was filled with anger. Just as she was about to speak, the light of advancement shone once again. In an instant, the entire Dragon Clan's land was illuminated as bright as day. Everyone was surprised. Chapter 4398. Long Qian and everyone else looked up at the source of the light, their hearts feeling uncomfortable as if they were being scratched by a cat. They really wanted to rush in and see who was causing such a commotion. Is there a problem with this advancement light? A Forgotten River Dragon Clan member raised an objection. Am I seeing things? Why do I feel like it's flashed 3 times? Long Shangyun said expressionlessly, You're not seeing things. It's indeed 3 times. In other words, it was very likely that the little stoic had advanced 3 minor realms in a short few minutes. Heh. That clansman glanced at Long Shangyun with an odd expression. What's going on? Miss Shangyun's expression looks a little strange. What level is this person advancing? She's not a great spiritual master, right? She should be a low-level spiritual master. It was still that brother who thought he was seeing things. If she's an advanced level spiritual master, it's impossible for her to advance so rapidly. Everyone knew that after entering the 10th level of spiritual masters, their advancement would become increasingly slow. Especially after experiencing the 5-spirit reincarnation cycle, cultivators who had reached the divine realm might not be able to advance 1 minor realm after 3 to 5 years, or even 8 to 10 years on their slow cultivation path. Sometimes, advancing 1 major realm can consume a person's entire life. That brother's spittle flew everywhere as Long Shangyun rolled her eyes at him. Shut up. She couldn't take it anymore and interrupted that idiot's incessant rambling. Don't you smell an aura that surpasses spirit power coming from all directions? Surpassing spirit power? What kind of power could it be? Naturally, it was the mighty divine power of a divine realm cultivator. The analytical emperor, who had been analyzing confidently, instantly widened his eyes. It can't be? That's right, it couldn't be. The Forgotten River Dragon clan members all looked at their clan leader, whose expression was turning increasingly ugly. Long Qian took a deep breath and turned to Mo Lien with clenched fists. She's advancing? No wonder there was such a big commotion. Do you think it's a good thing to indulge her like this? Once she can't control the power of the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl, then she bang. Mo Lien didn't hold back at all and directly slammed the court door shut in front of this Dragon Clan leader. A few of the younger generation of the Dragon Clan who were filled with righteous indignation raised their swords and sabers, wanting to kick the door open and argue with Mo Lien. However, when he kicked it, it was as if he had kicked a hard iron plate. Taking a closer look, Yin Mansion was surrounded by a defensive barrier. Prince Mo must have left something behind to prevent them from barging in. Long Qian didn't leave with her men. Instead, she stood at the entrance of Yun Mansion, feeling tormented and exhausted. His body and mind were ravaged as he looked at it, and the light of advancement kept coming out of it. When dawn came, everyone's faces were numb, and their eyes were red as they stared in the direction of Yun Garden. They waited for another hour. The Emperor of Analysis from before finally opened his mouth and said weakly, It seems to have stopped advancing. Only then did everyone heave a sigh of relief, as if they had been granted amnesty. 19 times. That night, that pervert demon leveled up 19 times in a frenzy. He skipped 3 to 4 major realms in a row, which was a total of 19 minor realms. Everyone from the Forgotten River Dragon clan really wanted to knock on the door and ask the person inside, "Are you still human?" Arbor exhaled deeply and slowly opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was Mo Lien, who was standing at the door and smiling at him. The little stoic's eyes lit up, and she hopped off the bed. Chapter 4399. Mo Lien could not help but laugh. He reached out to catch his wife, who was bouncing over, and rubbed his chin on her furry head. "Jojo, how do you feel?" Arbor raised her little head and looked at him with sparkling eyes. Not bad. Her advancement this time was surprisingly smooth. In less than a day, her cultivation had increased by leaps and bounds. Arbor subconsciously raised her hand and touched her lower abdomen. This time, the Divine Ruins realm had strengthened and expanded. When she looked inside herself, she could clearly see the 10,000-year-old shark pearl that was hiding in the Divine Ruins realm and did not dare to see her. This 10,000-year-old shark pearl was very intelligent. It seemed to have realized that when the seal had exploded, it had caused her to be injured, and its behavior was very bad. Therefore, it was very understanding. In order to make up for its previous mistake, it tried its best to help her advance. She had started from a level 2 God tier master and reached the peak of a level 5 God tier master. She had jumped over so many small thresholds that she could not even count them with 2 hands. She could not even count the number of times she had advanced so quickly in the 3 continents. When ordinary people stepped onto the God-tier master steps, 10 or 20 years would be like a day. There were many people who would risk their lives to climb a small step, but she had advanced 3 major realms in one go. It was really indescribable. The Divine Division Record Soul Chapter had already broken through to the 10th level. A 10th branch vein had formed in her spirit vein. When the seal on the shark pearl was broken, the trembling of her tendons and her god power had disappeared. Between the 10 branch veins and the main vein, god power was endlessly flowing. It was as if a river had gathered and formed an ocean. Yin couldn't help smiling when he saw her glowing eyes and glowing with vigor. He liked to see her bright and spirited appearance. Reaching out to pull her into his embrace, Prince Imo raised his hand and gently caressed her cheek. "Jojo, you really scare me before." Arbor looked at him apologetically and patted his chest. "Don't be afraid. Haven't I profited from this disaster and am safe now?" "Profited from this disaster," Yin muttered to herself. She pinched her little chin and said, "This is a blessing in disguise. You really scared me to death." Xiao Mu tilted her small head and nuzzled in his embrace again and again before wrapping her arms around his waist and hugging him tightly. Blatantly flirting. "Don't mess around." Prince Imo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He reached out to support her body and lowered his head to bite her lips. "Your husband will resist." The little stoic threw him a small "come at me" look and even tilted her head, her expression very deadpan and taut. It was too vivid. She was like a little kitten, scratching his heart with her 2 little claws. Yin grabbed her waist and gritted her teeth. "Huh, you asked for it. Don't beg for mercy later if you have the guts." Before he could finish his words, there was a knock on the door. The little stoic suddenly giggled at him and pushed away her pitiful wooden-headed husband. She turned around and ran to open the door while saying, "What are you knocking for?" "I'm here." "Greetings to the crown princess." A hidden guard stood at the door and bowed respectfully. Suddenly, he felt 2 knife-like gazes on him. The hidden guard inexplicably glanced at them and immediately straightened his body like a statue. He stammered, "Greetings to His Highness the Crown Prince." Why is His Highness looking at me with such a murderous gaze?" He didn't do anything out of line." "What is it?" the little stoic asked. The hidden guard continued to stutter. "The Night Pavilion sent news." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.